first City Council meeting for Half Moon Bay. Welcome everybody for attending. Welcome especially to the Girl Scouts who are with us this evening. Thank you for coming and thank you for bringing cookies with you. We appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'd like to welcome everybody here and convene our regular meeting and ask for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Penrose.
Here.
Councilmember Muller.
Here.
Councilmember Fraser.
Here.
Vice Mayor Reddick.
Here.
Mayor Kowalczyk.
Here. Please rise as we present the flags for the Pledge of Allegiance. Take it away, girls. Thank you, girls. Good evening. I'd like to start our meeting with a moment of silence. We had a fatality of a resident this past week, and just like to recognize him with a moment of silence for Margarito Sarabia. Thank you. Please let the meeting minutes reflect that we open the meeting with that honor. Our first item is proclamations and presentations, and we have a presentation from the Coastside Youth Council. I invite you to come to the podium. I have a presentation on the screen. I was approached by these young leaders and with Monty. And Monty, your organization again is ILY. It's Youth Leadership Institute, and they did some pretty terrific work in our community, and I invited them to come present that to us today. Tell us who they are and what they did. Thank you.
Well, good evening, City Council. My name is Montserrat Garcia, and I'm a program coordinator for the Youth Leadership Institute, and also the lead adult advisor for the Coastside Youth Council. The Coastside Youth Council is a program under the Youth Leadership Institute, which is also YLI for short, and it's also a chapter for the Friday Night Live statewide network, and their youth leaders composed of Pilarcitos High School, Half Moon Bay High School, and college students. They come from working class immigrant families and first generation college backgrounds, And they have been leading community change efforts for the past 4 years in Half Moon Bay by focusing on the impacts of alcohol messaging among Half Moon Bay youth. And they're here to introduce themselves, at least some of them.
Hello, my name is Margarita Vasquez, and I have been part of the CYC for 3 years now.
Hello, my name is Andrea Villegas, and I have been part of CYC for 3 months.
Hello, my name is Ruby Salazar, and I've been part of the CYC for almost 3 years.
And unfortunately, the rest of the CYC members, which stands for COSAT Youth Council, couldn't make them for work or school reasons. So as an organization, the Youth Leadership Institute builds communities where young people and their adult allies come together to create positive change. But the Youth Leadership Institute has been leading community projects to create sustainable community change in the Central Valley and all throughout the Bay Area for the past 25 years. Specifically in Half Moon Bay, we've been around for about 8 years. The CYC has been recognized by the County Board of Supervisors, and currently we're recruiting for our transportation access and economic security projects, along with our equity project, which is why we're here today.
One of the main components of the Youth Leadership Institute is to invest in young people to develop strong leadership skills to lead the change we want to see. As an expert in the community, I joined CYC because I wanted an opportunity to build skills that are going to last me a lifetime. This is the first time I attend and present at a city council meeting, and the first time I feel that the work that I am doing matters to my community.
As we develop our leadership skills with the membership and guidance of YLI, we were able to strengthen them throughout our research process. Personally, I have grown up, and all of CYC have grown up in Half Moon Bay, seeing alcohol signs from elementary to middle school to high school. As I got older, I understood that alcohol was easy to access and that alcohol messages were everywhere. If you really think about it, there are in movies, commercials, restaurants, and other corner stores I still go to every day. But I didn't know that there was something I could do about it. I still go to every day. This is why this project is so important to me, because even though our observational assessment at the Pumpkin Festival showed that in social settings, vendors are responsible in selling alcohol, our corner store assessment and 100 resident surveys at the Night of Lights showed that young people are still being affected by alcohol signs today. It is evident that other Half Moon Bay residents and youth felt similar to how I have been feeling, but we did not know that there were our community solutions to address the impacts of alcohol messaging, and that people would highly and positively support a local policy that would decrease alcohol signage near schools. Thank you.
As Ruby mentioned, our intention to propose community solutions based on our findings is a vital process that needs your support and championship. We cannot do this alone. As youth leaders, we understand that a local ordinance that enforces and strengthens the Lee Law, which is a state law that limits alcohol signage in corner and liquor stores windows to 33%, is the most appropriate solution to decrease alcohol messages in our city. We have provided you with a model ordinance utilized in neighboring cities that have passed local policies that actually decrease their percentage to 15%. To ensure that alcohol signage is not impacting youth's decision to engage in underage or binge drinking. Moving forward, we would appreciate a meeting with the city attorney, staff, and city council members to discuss the possibility of getting this item on future agendas. We are currently setting up a meeting with a town sheriff to share our work as well, and you are all welcome to join us if you would like. Lastly, a step to complement the regulations of number of alcohol messages in order to mitigate the impact of alcohol signage. We want to promote healthy messages and encourage the city of Half Moon Bay to join the San Mateo County signage campaign. Alcohol messages would be replaced with a professional sign that notes that only 21 and over customers will be sold alcoholic beverages.
Thank you once again for your time and for all of your patience too. And once again, my contact information is right there, and we want to do a formal closing by inviting you all to our upcoming youth retreats, which will happen on March 5th and March 12th. They're all day in our San Mateo office, and I can send you more information on that too. And that's where our youth from all over San Mateo County will be coming together to learn about transportation access and economic security. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Monte. Thank you to the COSIDE Youth Council. If you could email me that information, I'll make sure the whole council gets it and we can share that with the community. Thank you for your presentation. So that the key takeaway is that from your study, I think there were 3 of 8 businesses that have over signage for alcohol-based beverages. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so I'd like to ask staff to look at that, and it may be that the business owners aren't even aware of a requirement. It may be they need to understand that, but we can certainly take action on that in a respectful, proper way. But I really appreciate your leadership and bringing that to our attention. If you look around the room, you're the young leaders in the room, and most other young adults aren't here tonight, and you are, and I think it says something about you, and what you brought us tonight is something we didn't know, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is announcements of community activities and community service. So I'm just aware of 3 items to share. There is, on Saturday is opening day for Little League in Half Moon Bay. And so they have opening day ceremonies at Smith Field. There is, on Sunday, March 6th, there's Lawyers in the Library, where residents can schedule a 20-minute session on the topic of immigration with an attorney. It's available to our community. And then also on Sunday the 6th from 2 to 3, there is a music performance at the library, Chinese Melodrama, which is a Half Moon Bay-based acoustic rock group. They're quite cool, quite good. Any other activities anybody aware of? With that, we will ask the city attorney to report out from closed session.
And there was no reportable action taken.
Thank you, City Attorney. Thank you, Reed. Going to council reports. Councilmember Penrose, you have something to share tonight?
Yes, it's been a busy month. I attended the airport roundtable discussion in Foster City, which talked about the impact of the new flyways over the peninsula. On the 5th, I went to the Congregational Church, San Mateo, and attended a discussion of affordable housing. It was a very dynamic, wonderful session. Jerry Hill was there, Don Horsley, and other dignitaries. We had our city council retreat on the 9th. I attended the mayor's State of the City address on the 11th. On the 14th, the concert in the park, which was really wonderful, well attended, lots of fun, people dancing. It was great. On the 16th, the new skate park had their groundbreaking ceremony, and I attended that. On the 22nd, Jackie Spears had a town meeting which was centered around the lack of affordable housing, and we heard some really horrendous stories, just as we hear them in our town here, about people being evicted without just cause because of rent increases. And then on the 26th, I got to meet with the COSIDE Youth Council just to get to know them. So it was a busy month.
Thank you. Yeah, no wonder you're sick. I hope you feel better soon. Councilmember Muller.
Yeah, thank you. Along with the rest of you, attended the February 9th all-day council retreat. That was very successful. I think we all worked hard to pull things together for 2016 and 17. And then this past Thursday night with Chamber of Commerce, attended the teachers fundraisers where everyone made a contribution to support the school teachers. And I was really happy that my teacher was from Pescadero, so I was able to share my gift with a Pescadero teacher. So I thought it was very successful. And our dear friends at Hasek Hardware were very generous with school supplies this year to all of our teachers. And it's just amazing how wonderful a family it is there to step up and give back the way all of us try to do. So, and the rest of the time I was in travel.
Thank you, John. Councilmember Frazier.
Thank you. I attended the new skateboard park groundbreaking with other council members and Boys and Girls Club supporters, so that's underway. As you can see, the fence in the parking lot out there. I also attended a Peninsula Conflict Resolution event where it was their 30th anniversary, but they were focusing on helping teens in the county with mediation and conflict resolution. So that was really moving stories to hear from the teens. Attended the library JPA, and one of the items that were discussed was a presentation on new branding for the county library system that is more inclusive of all the new activities that a library represents. So you'll start to see that new branding coming out in the spring. And also, since the summer learning programs, there were 3 communities that had them last year, Half Moon Bay, Pescadero, and South San Francisco. They were so successful that they're expanding them to 7 different cities this coming summer. And the success of that was the children involved were able to keep at their level of reading or higher, just being engaged all summer with the summer learning program. And that ties in with the county's Big Lift program, making sure kids can read at their designated level. I did have a visit with the Coastside Land Trust Board, and they explained to me some of their trails and their projects that are expanding along the bluff tops over the next several years. So that was great to see, and they've got a great group of volunteers. I attended a faith-based coalition for housing with Councilmember Penrose, as well as the town hall that was hosted by Congresswoman Spear, and that was to show her support from a federal level that all the cities are working together to solve this issue, which really is a regional Bay Area problem, never as much as it is now in a crisis situation. Not only is there no housing for anyone, they can't afford it, and there is some questionable evictions going on, and the Congresswoman was really focusing and trying to get help for those people and possibly change laws so people have a little breathing room when situations happen and they're not put out in the street. And we heard some really true life horrendous stories that are going on for people. I also attended the Board of Supervisors meeting where they discussed many of the projects that are a benefit of Measure A, and particularly several that are from the coastside as a benefit. Everything from health services to Pescadero to Montera to also other learning opportunities for children. And one of the items they discussed, the county is applying for grant funds for a summer beach shuttle on the coast. So we should hear more about that. This would be, if they get the grant, it would be a free shuttle that would run from Half Moon Bay up to Montera continuously all day, free for the summer. So that will be awesome. I also attended a jobs housing workshop, which delved into many opportunities that collaborates for housing. So those are some of the activities.
Wow, it's a very busy council. Yes. But before I go to the Vice Mayor, I was neglected to mention that we have simultaneous translation this evening provided by Isabel, and if you need translation into Spanish, please approach Isabel on my left and she will give you a headset. Also, if you are a speaker this evening, if you want to speak, fill out the blue card. There is a box at the end of the table. Please provide the blue card into the box. Thank you. And now to the Vice Mayor, Deborah Ruddick.
Given the weight of our agenda this evening, I'm going to pass on reports. Thanks.
Thank you. So I have a few things to highlight. So my State of the City address, and that is available on the city's website. You can observe that there for those of you who weren't in attendance. Groundbreaking for the skate park and some development there. I have to go give them a hard time because I want to see more progress, because I want to hit that July deadline for the ribbon cutting, because I've already bought some skateboards and I'm ready to use them. I welcomed the first Community Academy class, the NET class, and spent some time with some 25 members of our community, and what a terrific mix of folks from the community that volunteered to spend 4 Wednesdays getting to know one another and getting to know the city, learned about the exciting world of the city attorney and other similar exciting things at the first session. And it was really great because the mix was, there were some high school, college age, young adults, older adults, just a terrific mix. So I welcome that, and I look forward to the continuation of this program, and then Later in the year, we will offer the same program entirely in Spanish. Attended the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side meeting with with Vice Mayor Ruddick, and reviewed proposals to help move the recycled water project forward and potentially spending resources. The issue we ran into there is we do not yet have a letter of intent with CCWD, and that's kind of been the ongoing issue for ages. So we're trying to get through that and resolve that. And I also toured the fire training tower construction site with Chief Cole, and got an update regarding that item for tonight's meeting. Those are my reports. Report from City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start, try to be brief, but I had the good fortune of being principal for the day today at Hatch School, and I had a wonderful time, spent time with teachers and parents, and most especially the children. And they're just brilliant, smart children, and I think I need to make a stop there at least once a week, because that's the good reminder of why we work as hard as we do in the work that we're doing. So that was a real pleasure for me, so I want to thank the school district for making that available. I also want to mention to the council and the community that the Half Moon Bay Currents that goes out quarterly should be, if it hasn't already, hit mailboxes. So this is it. There's some in the back there if folks are interested. Thank you for commenting on Half Moon Bay Net. We staff are very excited about the opportunity to be able to engage with the community in a less formal manner and get to know one another. So we're looking forward to our second session, which will be tomorrow night. And finally, I hope that the council will be patient with us. We're trying new things. We've made some improvements to our council chambers here. We have a new dais. We've got these new cameras so that the folks can sit behind the monitor there and monitor the work that they're doing. They can see better what is being projected. Our city clerk here is showing me that our meetings are now live streamed on the city's website. As a result of the work that we've been doing. So we've been trying to make some improvements. We also have the simultaneous translation, which is starting today, will be available at each of the meetings, presuming that there is a need for that. Quería explicarles en español para los que no tienen todavía, si es que necesitan o que les gustaría tener información en español, pueden, mi amiga Isabel aquí atrás tiene información y tienen los aparatos para que puedan escuchar la junta en español. So I just wanted to say, for those who don't speak English, they know that in Spanish that they can have those headsets, because telling them in English doesn't help so much. And finally, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got 4 cards for public forum. First is Jules Sofer, followed by Carlisle Young.
Good evening, members of the council and staff. I'm here to ask the council to step back and consider carefully the training tower when you do it. And I'm doing it on public forum because I don't have an opportunity to discuss it when it comes up before you in the meeting.
I'm sorry, sir. Why do you not have the opportunity? We have this item on the agenda, and you can certainly speak on the item.
I can, but it's the last item on your agenda, and I won't be here then.
Very well, sir. Continue, please.
Thank you very much. If you move it up on the agenda, I'd be happy to wait until it comes up. But if you leave it till the end of the agenda, it could very well be at a time that I'm usually asleep.
Please continue, sir.
Thank you. So the first thing that I wanted to say was that the process for the fire tower was done incorrectly, as you will find out when the presentation is made to you later on. And I hope that you will take that strongly into consideration. And secondly, is it really the best location in our community to have it where it's being planned to be put? I'd like those 2 points really to be uppermost in your mind when you hear the discussions pro and con. Is this really the best location for the community? Do we want it there? Because I've heard from a lot of people that they want the tower. They want the fire department to have the training facility, but they don't like it in that spot. So you might want to consider that in your deliberations also. Those are the 2 points that I wanted to put forward to you. Please consider them carefully. The shortcuts that were taken to get this where it is right now are, I have a feeling they came from either fear or hubris. Fear because maybe the board of the fire department didn't know whether it would go through, and so they pushed it through with a lot of shortcuts and in a way that maybe wasn't proper. I shouldn't say maybe, it wasn't proper. I'll be specific. And hubris because they thought as a public agency doing good works for the community that they can be above the law. And I don't think that anybody is above the law in this country. I'll stop there. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Next is Carlisle Young, and followed by Susan Foley. If you have items to give to the city council, please give them to city staff. The box at the end of the table is fine.
Sorry about that, didn't know your rules. Carlisle and Young from Moss Beach. My subject is traffic this past month and beyond. I'm here to express my sorrow over the tragic accident within the city limits of Half Moon Bay, which resulted in the loss of a life and the injury to others, including the adult daughter of a good friend. There are really no words. I, like many coastsiders on the mid-coast, do not get to vote for the elected leaders of Half Moon Bay, but your decisions do affect the rest of us, which is why I'm here tonight. For years and years, your focus has been on building more attractions to draw traffic to Half Moon Bay. Visitors serving businesses such as the Ritz-Carlton, Oceana Hotels, Harbor Village Shopping Center, and the surrounding restaurants were not there in 1988 when I moved here and became a resident. There were only 3 traffic signals between Capistrano Road and Highway 92 on Highway 1. No one will deny if you build it, they will come. And now the Big Wave Office Park is offering a build-to-suit flyer showing commute times from different points within the Bay Area. That was in the handout that you didn't want to look at. And basically, they are showing commute times from Hayward and beyond. So much for the local job mantra that they use to gain votes for that project. I attended planning hearings over in Redwood City where I witnessed city council members from Half Moon Bay actively lobbying on behalf of that developer to build it. And yet, school buses have long been eliminated by Cabrillo Unified School District, and now the next shiny new project that you want to construct is a huge library to draw yet more parental trips from the mid-coast to the center of your town. But in the meantime, the council has done next to nothing to analyze, let alone assuage, the daily gridlock. We won't even discuss the Valentine's Day weekend traffic these past 2 years. What I'm requesting is that the City Council immediately form a traffic task force to brainstorm ways to attempt to fix traffic now. Don't wait for some forthcoming Caltrans study or a Connect the Coastside consultant to figure things out. Don't expect someone else to do it. Get a group of mid-coasters and from your community to create a suggestion box and put it out now and start today, not next week, next year, or sometime. You owe it to the families of the citizens of Half Moon Bay and the mid-coast. I read this on Nextdoor last week. It will only use this person's first name. Real quick, I'll wrap it up. This was her advice. She stated, her name is Nancy from Miramar, accidents happen and there is a need to look at traffic patterns, conditions, etc. But there's definitely one thing we can control, and that is how police or towns handle these accidents when they occur. How can they close a major road for 4 hours and not direct people? How How about one officer walking down the street telling people that what their options are, guiding people to park and walk home, or provide some transportation for those that can't? Something to get parents and their kids waiting at home or the kids stuck in cars. I see that there is someone from the Sheriff's Department here. On my attachment, I put something about the Explorer program. Maybe that's a cost-effective way for you guys to, you know, have some traffic control that's on the weekends when we have gridlock.
Thank you, and I will look at your attachment. Thank you. Susan Foley, followed by Osman Yulna.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Susan Foley. I've been a resident of the city of Half Moon Bay since 1992, first on Cypress and then on Grinnelly now. I Sunday went to recycle behind Safeway, and I could not believe what's going on behind Safeway. And when I called the Sheriff's Department, they said the homeless camp, it's not a homeless camp, it's a drug den. I was there 45 minutes waiting to recycle, and I saw drug deals, and I saw products to be manufacturing drugs, and it is not a homeless camp. It is a dangerous condition. The city is on formal notice. I went into Safeway and asked the manager. He said it's the state of California's land. It's not the city. The sheriff wasn't clear. I'm not clear. On Monday, I went and drove in there during the day to take pictures. I couldn't because I was accosted by the people that live there. And I saw two teenagers walk out of there, stoned out of their minds. So you've got drug dealing going on there. If it's not your property and you built Oak Park on Oak Avenue, then you put a park in a dangerous condition, and you're on notice because those kids play at Oak Park. I went to Oak Park. I started toward the creek, and a city employee told me and my paralegal, don't go down there, it's dangerous. So the city knows it's dangerous. Oak Park was littered with drug paraphernalia. Oak Park provides the bathrooms. They are not homeless. They are drug addicts. I don't know why they're there. I don't know why no one is making them go. But I haven't worked very hard to stay in Half Moon Bay to be exposed to that, or my kids to be exposed to that, or my neighbors. And something needs to be done. I can call and contact your attorney tomorrow and be informed as to who's responsible. I can personally sue them because it's a public nuisance. But I think that they should be given their 30-day eviction notice and it should be cleared out. And I did do some research and found that someone dealt with it in 2013, the environmental people, because they're littering. They're not littering. I mean, they're presenting a danger, and it needs to be dealt with. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time and your comments and informing us more about the hazard. Osman, and pardon me if I'm not reading this correctly, Yulnif, followed by Donald Sheridan.
Good evening. My name is Osman Yusuf. I've spoke here once before. I've been here since 2001, off and on. And I live here with my mother, Maura Jones, on Spruce and 3rd. And today I had code enforcement come to my house, lie to my mother and I regarding another person that she brought that happened to be an undercover cop or some type of agent, something like this, okay? She told us her name was a lie, okay? And I recognized her from Redwood City at the court building. 2 days ago was my 7th case that I've beaten in this county, which I got arrested 6 times in this town. 6 cases I have beaten without a paid lawyer in the span of 2 years. And when I tell you that the harassment and the wrongdoing that was done to my mother and I is outrageous. Something that you don't even want to wish upon anyone, okay? So I don't know what's going on, but I can definitely tell you that is wrong, okay? You guys don't know what you're doing. okay? Do you guys understand? This is the second time I came here. I asked for help last time, and you guys didn't help me. You told me I should go talk to the sheriffs. The sheriffs are not helping people. They are hurting people. And if they were doing their job, like this lady said, they would take care of the back of Safeway, okay? And you should let the firemen get whatever they need to help us and save us if we have emergency. They obviously know what's good for us. They're doing that job. They're the ones rescuing and saving us. They're the ones who I'm wanting to come and pick me up in an ambulance at the substation because I know I'm going to be safe when they take me to the crazy house. Yeah, illegally. You should find out what's going on with your sheriffs. Have a nice night. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald Sheridan, followed by John Owen.
Good evening. My name is Donald Sheridan, Half Moon Bay. And this last week I talked with the sheriff and the school department and Alex from the city regarding children crossing Highway 1. Last Tuesday, February 23rd, all the children in the district were released all at the same time. The children from Hatch crossed Highway 1, the children from Cooners crossed Highway 1, simultaneously. All the teachers were in the school having lunch. It was a minimal day, no supervision. The children ran crazy. There was no police around. I was on Kelly Street there. I waited 40 minutes after calling the sheriff's department to get someone to help the children cross the road, some police presence, because it was so crazy. I was informed that police were...
Excuse me, sir. Sir, excuse me. If you could please step back from the mic a few inches. It's difficult to understand you. Thank you.
Sure. I was informed that the police were dealing with a problem behind Safeways, and they were dealing at the police station just here with homeless people. I waited 40 minutes, and then I went to the police department, and I was told that I should come down and I should talk to the council, because they're stretched very thinly. Apparently, they gave the City of Half Moon Bay a very good deal 4 years ago when they contracted with us 5 years ago. Now, it's a lot busier, and I urge you all to spend the money that you need to spend to do the job, both with the sheriff and with the fire department. A lot of money was spent on that central median planting down the middle of the road. If you look where the kids cross on Highway 1 there at Kelly Street, they have a little patch to stand on. All the police agreed with me. I've lived here 25 years. For 25 years, I've realized this is a problem. The schools have been there for years. You have $7 million to spend on safety. I urge you tonight to spend it, and spend it immediately before you get sued. Because things are different now than they were 25 years ago. And the skate parks are nice. You've got this control center here, that's very nice. Lots of the other projects are very nice. But safety of the kids is number one, numero uno. And I tell you right now, if you don't move forward with that crossing in the next few days, I will embarrass you. I will get the news media, I will get people sharply focused on that, because it is ridiculous, because the children have to stand on gravel to cross the road.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
John Ullum.
Nothing but kudos tonight. The Spanish translation is awesome. I think you might be one of the first communities that has actually cared enough to do something like that. And frankly, I think there's one man who's more responsible for that than anything. That'd be Mr. Kowalczyk, who's reached out to the Hispanic community more than anybody in this, in our politics locally. At any rate, now for the praise sandwich. It's going good, but we need to work on the microphone a little bit. The local sound is overwhelming her ability to speak over it. We need something that's directional or something like that. And we're broadcasting it tonight, so you not only have a Spanish broadcast or translation here, but you may be the very first city council that has put out a broadcast over the internet, live streaming it. The last thing I'd like to say is this stuff is cool. These guys have finally outclassed us. They're doing a great job. They're also doing it live in English, but they're not doing it live in Spanish, and that's why we're here tonight, because we're running out of reasons to be here. There is a solution. I know Marty would love to get me out of the view here, because I'm just smiling all the time when people are talking. So if we could maybe work a little cooperation. They have an HDMI out, I imagine, somewhere on their gear. If we could get access to that, we just have to plug in a laptop, an Elgato, you don't need to know what it is, and we're up and running. And we're broadcasting this meeting in Spanish each time. So I hope you'll consider that. Not much of an investment, and we can make that happen. We'd be glad to donate the equipment. Again, we really appreciate that you guys have made this step. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Move on to the consent agenda. I have two items to pull. I'm going to pull item 1C and item 1M. Any other items for discussion or to pull? Oh, I'm sorry, it was 1H, 1C and 1H. Okay, I apologize, I'm going to backtrack. I got a late public card. I cannot make out the name or the email. Juan Black Wolf. Juan Black Wolf, please come to the mic. You have 3 minutes, sir.
3 minutes, okay. I'm talking about the people behind Safeway here in Half Moon Bay, homeless people, as you call them. But I was there for 2 years now. I'm no longer there. I'm living on the beach. Thank you very much. And I'm an artist, I'm a writer, and I'm going to be writing about this experience that I've had, not only here, but across California, with the most wonderful people in the world, the homeless and the broke and the disadvantaged people. Hi, John. Yesterday, I went, because I check on my people every day, I went by just to drive through, and there was a couple of ladies from the state, they said, taking pictures with their phones, and I said, excuse me, how are you doing, ladies? Are you looking for someone? I know everybody here. And they said, no, we're from the state. And you better tell your friends to get out of there. Get out of there because the state's coming. Well, just a few weeks ago, this city was putting a dumpster for junk, and it got filled up, I don't know, twice or 3 times, because those people behind there are not homeless people. They are home here because they found a community that, to some degree, considers them a part of the human condition and takes care of them. And they take care of you guys back. I have seen much in my travels the past 4 years since I've been homeless. I'm a Native American. I am not homeless in this world. I have survived things you wouldn't believe. Overseas, the urban jungle, no problemo. We are rich here. So these people are not homeless, they're free. Does anybody understand freedom here? Do we all understand what that means? It means they want to be free to be themselves, and they are. And when I first met them, they wanted me down, they wanted me out, they wanted me dead, I don't know. But I am a survivor, and I'm a Native American, and I know how to survive it. I know how to defend myself. And they got it real quick. Now, after 2 years, I love these people like my brothers and sisters. We have grown. And there is the beginning of a consensus. We have to do something for this community. We have to do something for the Daves who lay and pee in the gutter. We have to, and we do, and we have. One incident, and I'll just end here. Okay, ready? 2 years ago, or no, maybe not 2 years ago, I was in my Native American Hogan, which I built and became somewhat of an ashram for Vietnam veterans and whoever cared to sit and talk with the old man. One night I heard screams, and this woman was saying, I'm being stabbed, I'm being stabbed. And I woke up, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I grabbed my Tommy Hawk, excuse me, and I said, listen, Mama Jama, if I have to get up, you're going to get hurt. Stop hurting that woman. Well, anyway, I got up, and guess what? I'm blind. I walked off a cliff here at the after being so long story. But anyway, I realized I couldn't see what was going on, so I ran up to Safeway, and I called the police. And the next thing, there was fire engines, there was police, there was a million people there rescuing this young lady, and she was stabbed by some crazy guy who had a boat in the harbor.
Please wrap up, sir.
Okay. So anyway, that young lady had 7 stitches and came back. The man, by the way, who was, I don't know who he was left unarrested. He asked me to buy him a beer at 2:30 in the morning. And I said, are you some kind of sociopath, man? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
But we are working.
Thank you. So I am move back to consent calendar. I'm pulling item 1C and 1H. Any other items to pull? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll also move the consent calendar with the items 1C and 1H for later in this meeting.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item number 2A, discussion of upcoming ballot initiative requiring a supermajority city council vote in order to authorize certain city financing.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Reed Galogly, Deputy City Attorney, here tonight to discuss a upcoming ballot initiative. But before we commence discussion, I would like to make a recommendation that council, by motion, vote to waive the attorney-client privilege related to the expert advice letter written by bond counsel so that we can have a thorough and open discussion this evening. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Yes, that's a great point. So moved. This is to release the letter from Jones Hall, the bond attorney, the bond advisor, to the public. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Please continue, sir.
With that in mind, we have some copies of the letter that we will be passing out for any interested parties who want to look at a hard copy of the letter. For your information, we'll be discussing the contents of it up on the PowerPoint. So either way you go at it, you'll have the information available. But I'll give a minute or two for her to pass out the letters.
Thank you, Reed. Please continue.
All right, it seems everyone is settled in. To give a brief bit of background first, let's talk about April 2015, when the city first received notice of an upcoming ballot initiative. The city responded, prepared a ballot title and analysis, and that measure went out to the people The petitioners gathered enough signatures, submitted the information to the city, which was forwarded to the the county elections office. Ultimately, it qualified and was brought to council either to adopt or to place on the ballot. Council acted to place it on the ballot. In the interim time, city staff who were meeting with financial advisors regarding the library project made that financial advisor aware of the upcoming ballot initiative, and at that time our financial advisor raised a bunch of red flags and indicated we needed to seek expert bond counsel advice on this item, and which is exactly what we did. So we are now talking about the scintillating world of public financing. For those of you who have a propensity to fall asleep, I apologize in advance. What are we talking about? We're talking about a bond, and so these are some general definitions we need to get an understanding of. A bond. What is a bond? It's not a James Bond. It is an obligation or a promise. It's a very straightforward definition of a word. I'm sorry, am I not able to be heard? Bond is a legal term that has a very broad definition. It means a promise or an obligation. You know, you probably have some familiarity, not maybe personally, but you've seen commercials for bail bonds, probably the most common bond that people are familiar with. But there's also securities bonds, financial bonds, and in the case of the city, municipal bonds. And within the category of municipal bonds, which are bonds issued by a public agency, you have several different types. Bonds are essentially a way to raise money and pay it off over the course of time with a particular arrangement or another, depending on the type of bond that you use. Now, for tonight's discussion purposes, I'm looking at three major categories of municipal bonds. The general obligation bond, which is issued to raise immediate capital. It will cover expenses, and it's paid back by taxes. What does that mean? Excuse me just one moment here. It means that general obligation bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the government. Not only will we use property taxes to pay them off, we will use our taxing power to raise taxes to pay them off. Now, because a general obligation bond or a GO bond involves the authorization of a property tax increase, and due to California's complicated Prop 218, Prop 26, and other tax laws and constitutional amendments, you need a two-thirds prior voter approval before you can issue a general obligation bond. Another category of bond is an assessment bond. It is also issued to raise immediate capital, but it is only repaid from taxes collected from the properties that actually are benefited by the proposed project. So unlike a general obligation bond where everybody pays for it, an assessment bond is only paid for by the people who are going to benefit from the project. A good example of this would be a sewer assessment. If a neighborhood needed new sewer lines, a sewer assessment bond could be issued to facilitate the construction of those sewer lines, and that sewer assessment bond would be paid for by the individual houses that actually get the benefit of the new sewer line. A third category of municipal bonds are revenue bonds. Now, the previous two categories we talked about are paid for with taxes. Revenue bonds as a category are not. They're repaid from a revenue stream, sometimes generated by the project that's being built, such as a toll bridge or a toll road, but other sources are permissible to pay off the revenue stream bond. Within revenue bonds is a subcategory. That subcategory is lease revenue bonds, and they are a particular device involving a complicated lease-back transaction. A third entity, a JPA perhaps, in the circumstances that we look at, the library JPA, for example, could issue a lease revenue bond, construct the facility, lease the facility back to the city, and then the city would pay off the lease revenue bond, and eventually, after the lease payments were completed, would own the facility and the transaction would be complete. Now, this is payable solely, as you'll see, from lease payments by the public agency other than the issuer. So this is a particular subcategory of revenue bonds generally, and it's a very complicated transaction. I think it's natural for people to be a little suspicious of this because it involves the lease-back aspect. So now we turn to the text of the proposed initiative. What is being put forward for the voters to consider tonight, in June? This is the actual language. I'm not putting anything fluffy in there. Prior to authorizing issuance of lease revenue bonds, all capitalized, the full membership of the City Council must pass a proposed resolution authorizing the issuance with a supermajority vote. Pretty straightforward sounding at first blush. We can look at the subparts A and B, which give definitions applicable to the top line. For purposes of this section, lease revenue bonds, all capitalized, are any bonds not backed by the full faith and credit, and or any bond issuance which does not receive the approval of the voters prior to issuance. Now, that's the part that we're going to spend some time unpacking. The second part, B, talks about what a supermajority vote is. To clarify for anybody who doesn't understand that, in the context of a 5-person council, that means you need 4 out of 5 people to vote, as opposed to just a simple majority of 3 of 5, which is how most business is conducted by the council. So we're turning to the actual 2-part issue that we have. This is unpacking that first part A. The initiative requires a supermajority vote before the issuance of, quote, any bond issue not backed by the full faith and credit, and any bond issuance which does not receive the approval of voters prior to its issuance. This basically means that if the supermajority vote is 4 council members and 2 council members decide they don't want to vote for the project or the financing for the project can't go forward. So what's the effect of the proposed initiative? We sought expert legal advice because bond law is very, very specialized. As I've said at our net meetings, I am somewhat of a generalist as a city attorney. We have to know a little about a lot of stuff and a lot about a little stuff. But in this case, if you're a bond practitioner, that's all you do. So our qualifications for our experts are pretty clear. It's a firm in San Francisco. All they do is municipal bond work. They've been bond counsel, district counsel, special tax counsel, as you can see, from school districts to counties to other agencies. And last year they advised on over $5.3 billion in bonds. So when you talk about expertise, Jones Hall is right up there with the best. The particular lawyer that we spoke to, our contact is Charles Chick Adams. He's been practicing for 40 years, went to Yale University, University of Michigan Law School, which is extraordinarily highly rated for those of you who don't know, was summa cum laude, all the honors you could imagine. He's a shareholder at James Hall, meaning he's not just a lawyer, he owns part of the firm, and he's a big mover and shaker there. And he was previously at ORIC, and ORIC has a bunch of other names after it that continue to change, but one thing that doesn't change, they're always the #1 bond counsel in the United States. So he was previously with them, went out and started his own firm with a few other friends. He's also a former mayor and council member in San Mateo County. So he understands local issues as well as just sort of the theoretical parts of the law. So what is the effect? We have a 3-page letter that's been distributed. I hope if you have a desire, you'll read it, but we can just follow along with me if not. And what we talked about when I talked to our bond counsel was looking at things by their intentions versus what they actually do. And so tonight we're here to look at what this potential proposed initiative will actually do, not what we think it will do or what we want it to do. So here we are, the effect. What's the effect on general obligation bonds? We'll cut to the chase. The takeaway on the bottom is there is no effect on general obligation bonds. It's the only type of financing that won't be affected by this initiative. The reason being, it already requires a 2/3 voter approval. I mentioned that earlier. And it's backed by the full faith and credit of the government. That's what a general obligation bond is. It's backed by not only your tax base, but also the power to tax, the promise to increase taxes if you have to. So general obligation bonds remain unchanged. Go to the next category, and I labeled it as assessment bonds, but it can also be referred to as special tax bonds. And these are the bonds that are paid for with taxes, but only from the taxes of the individuals whose properties are going to be served for the proposal. So an assessment under California law is a levy or charge imposed upon a real property for a specific benefit conferred. That's different than a tax or a fee, but that's a little bit of a legal distinction that we won't get into tonight. So the first part of the initiative, that's the backed by the full faith and credit. How does that affect the assessment bonds? Well, assessment bonds are not backed by the full faith and credit of the government. They're repaid from the taxes of the individuals who benefit. So they don't have the full faith and credit of the government, meaning that part 1 of the initiative would require assessment bonds to have a 4/5 vote. The issue with that, there is no issue. You can vote 4/5 if you need to, but the consideration is assessment bonds are paid for by the individuals who benefit for them. There are constitutional and statutory provisions that are very complex that deal with noticing. If you've seen your sewer rate increases in the last year or so, there's a notice, there's a public hearing, there's an opportunity to protest. So in addition to all those already existing constitutional requirements, we're going to add another layer on of a 4/5 majority vote of council, supermajority vote of council. And if we were to look at part 2 of the initiative, which requires that same vote before any bond issue, that second part would also trigger the requirement, because a bond issue is a promise to repay money. So anytime you promise to repay money, you're going to be required to have a 4/5 vote. So the takeaway, again, assessment bonds would be required to have a 4/5 vote before they could be issued. And that's, I think, different than what most people have an understanding of what the Lease Revenue Bond Act was going to do. Oh, and so I put on a couple agencies here. There's some in the House tonight, but you probably see fire district assessments on your property taxes or water district assessments. So those are probably more common things that people would understand an assessment bond. Finally, we get to revenue bonds generally. Part 1, before the issuance of any bond issue not backed by the full faith and credit of the government. Well, revenue bonds are not backed by the full faith and credit of the government. They're backed by a revenue stream, whether it's a revenue stream from the project that's being built or a different source, such as a set-aside special fund the city may designate. It's not backed by the full faith and credit. It's backed by a different source. And so the first part of the initiative would require every revenue bond, not just lease revenue bonds, to have a 4/5 vote. Now, part 2, if we go ahead, it says any bond issue which does not receive the approval, again, as we've talked about a little bit briefly, which is a bond issue just a promise to repay money, and you don't receive the approval of the voters prior to issuance, then you're going to have to go through this process. So the takeaway for revenue bonds is all revenue bonds, not just lease revenue bonds, are going to require a supermajority vote. So general obligation bonds remain unchanged. Assessment bonds have a new requirement. All revenue bonds have a new requirement. And now I'm looking at a comparison here. Lease revenue bonds versus revenue bonds themselves. So as I described initially, lease revenue bonds are a subcategory of revenue bonds. Repayment is done by lease payments from the city to a third-party issuer who will construct the improvements and then lease the facility back. I've got the examples up there. But these are typically used for projects that can pay their own way, like a toll road or a bridge, but they've often and historically been used for projects that don't actually have a revenue-generating source, like a fire station. Now we compare lease revenue bonds, again, a very specific transaction involving a lease back. It's understandable why people are shy of this. Revenue bonds generally, well, they're just secured through the proceeds of a revenue-producing facility. So if you want to build a water system or a sewer system and have the fees that the people who use it pay for the facility, you'll also need to go through a 4/5 supermajority vote. So revenue bonds, as it stands, don't require a 2/3 voter approval because they don't involve a tax, they just involve a revenue stream. And so whether you look at part 1 or part 2 of the statute, you're looking at a requirement for all revenue bonds to include a supermajority vote. Other financial mechanisms. So to recap, we've talked about bonds, and we're talking about the formal municipal bonds, general obligation bonds, assessment bonds, revenue bonds, and the subcategory of lease revenue bonds. A fourth category for city financing is just another financial mechanism, a loan, a straightforward loan. Well, as I discussed briefly, the initiative does not define the term bond. I have copy-pasted the text of the initiative up here for you. This is cut directly from the petition itself. It doesn't define bond, but the law in California does, and it defines it extraordinarily broadly. It includes a variety of different financing mechanisms, a promissory note. A promissory note is essentially someone gives you a loan, you write down on a piece of paper, I owe you $500,000, I will repay it with interest when you call it due at this time and at this place. So read broadly, as our bond counsel has done, the statute incorporates not just what you would think of as a traditional municipal bond, but indeed any bond issuance. And a bond issuance is a promise to pay money. What does that mean? State loan financing. The city often applies to the state revolving fund loan for wastewater, water projects, or other infrastructure improvements. Those are simple loans paid back. There's no bond issue, there's no special voter approval. It's a promise, it's an agreement. Under our bond council's interpretation, if you want to apply to borrow funds from the state revolving fund, you're going to have to get a 4/5 vote most likely, because you're issuing debt, you're issuing a bond or a promise to repay money. So the state says we'll give you $5 million to rebuild the bridge at whatever creek we have. What we need to have a 4/5 vote before we can do that, because in order for us to issue any type of bond, we need to have that 4/5 vote ahead of time. Interagency financings are the same. So whether it's a state revolving fund loan or a loan from City of San Francisco, our county, our neighbors anywhere, or even just Chase Bank across the street, when we sign or when the city signs a promise to repay money, that is a bond. And due to the lax language in the statute not defining bond, we're now with the situation where all of our loans are potentially implicated, and you'll see that in the letter. So here is the conclusion and the takeaway. All revenue bonds, not just lease revenue bonds, would require a 4/5 supermajority vote. All special tax and assessment bonds would require a 4/5 supermajority vote, even if the statutory and constitutional requirements, which are exhaustive, had been set out and met, and if the community that was going to pay for it and carry the burden wanted the project. State loan financing, interagency financings, a loan from a bank, you may have to get a 4/5 supermajority vote before you can do that, because the language is so broad. And finally, I said private financings there. The only thing that doesn't change is general obligation bonds, so at least we have some certainty there as what's going to happen. At this point, I invite any questions or comments from council. This is an informational item brought to you. Council and council members have the option of taking a public position in favor of or against a bond measure. That's a political decision that you're more than free to make. As staff learning this information, we wanted to make sure that the council had the full scope of it, fully understood the effects of it, as well as the public as we're coming up on the election cycle.
Thank you. Can you please make the presentation available on the city website?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And so any questions from council? I also have 2 blue cards.
Let's hear from the public.
2 blue cards. Okay. So speakers, we have 3 minutes. And first is David Oblovi, followed by John Ullum.
Good evening. My name is David Oblovi. I'm one of the signatories on what is titled the Taxpayer Protection Act. The first thing I'd like to ask of any of my representatives is, as I am an interested party and I have standing in this matter, if I do not complete my comments within the 3-minute period, I'm going to ask that you call me back up to answer your questions or make my comments. I requested the mayor to give me that leeway previously. He did not respond. So the funny thing about this is, Mr. Adams, the bond counsel, is phenomenally well qualified. I could have saved you the money. We intended the measure completely to cover any financing methods that were not essentially general obligation bonds. We did this because the city has a history of poor fiscal management. Build America bonds to pay off a judgment obligation. So there's no surprise here. When Mr. Galagli said that most people don't understand what the lease revenue bond was going to do, that's an insult. Well, first of all, saying that we didn't understand what we were going to do is kind of an insult. But saying that the 947 people who signed the petition to place this on the initiative or on the ballot didn't know what they were doing is incredibly insulting. They have asked for it to be on the ballot. They have a right to be on the ballot, and that's where it should sit. Having said that, you are faced with, you have 2 choices tonight. Well, 3 choices. 1 is do nothing, let it go to the ballot in June and be done with it. 2 is to ask the city attorney to work up a writ of mandate to try to keep it off the ballot in June. And 3 is to put a competing measure on the ballot in June. In other words, Measure E, Measure F, done over again. With that thought in mind, let's address what the city attorney said about the Taxpayer Protection Act. The Taxpayer Protection Act adds no restrictions to the city's ability to issue debt. If it did, it would not be constitutional. The Taxpayer Protection Act requires a 4/5 vote instead of a 3/5 vote for the city to exercise its constitutional right issue debt. That's all it does. Even without the Taxpayer Protection Act, you would still have to vote and administratively do absolutely everything you're going to do under the Taxpayer Protection Act to issue debt. You couldn't get any of these loans, as identified by the city attorney, without the same votes. I'm not sure how much time I'm going to get here, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead. This is legal. Propositions 25 and 26 in California in 2010 both make the point clearly. One proposition, 26, which passed and was upheld, increases legislative vote requirement to 2/3 for certain tax measures, including those that do not result in a net increase in revenue, currently subject to a majority vote. Prop 25 went the other way. They removed the 2/3 majority vote requirement. They removed the 2/3 majority requirement to pass the state budget. It is not legal to interfere with the state or the legislature or your authority to perform your constitutional duties. It is completely and totally legal for us to say we want a 4/5 vote instead of a 3/5 vote before you issue debt. I got 2 more things or 3 more things, and then I'll be done. You'll notice in the slides at the end, there was a list of things that this impacts. It impacts assessment districts. Yes, it impacts lease revenue bonds. It impacts revenue bonds. But the other things that it may impact are state loans, private financing, and interagency loans. There's no clarity there. So the only thing it's doing, again, the only thing this does is require a 4/5 vote before you issue certain forms of debt. And that's exactly how we intended it. So in closing, I'd like to just say, we went down this path 2 years ago with the bridge. The people said, look, this is what we want. We signed an initiative, we signed a petition, we put it in front of the council in a massive rush, went and put something onto the ballot that got killed, got clobbered. That disrespect should not be repeated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Ullum, followed by Paulette Eisen.
This felt an awful lot like city resources were expended to come up with your arguments against the Citizens Tax Initiative. I really believe that this is kind of crossing the line. So we've got people questioning what people's intentions were. We've got people questioning what people's motivations were. We've got people accusing people of trying to paralyze the city. This whole show is a campaign statement against the Citizens Taxpayers Initiative. There's no other point for it. The only reason you should be discussing it is how you would affect your projects after it gets passed, if it gets passed. This is obviously giving your arguments against it. You say that no tax increases will be ever needed for this. That's probably true. Can you tell me that everything in Half Moon Bay is the way it should be? You say that all the roads are fixed, that nothing is ever going to break, that nothing is going to change with the economy, that we'll never, ever, ever have a tax increase again, because this money is coming out of the same pool. If you run out of money, you're going to need a tax increase. You like to claim that you're using expert bond advice. You're an expert. He makes money off of lease revenue bonds. What do you expect him to say? You know, is he going to tell you that this is a stupid idea, this is wrong, that lease revenue bonds are really meant for people to pay the cost of the lease out of the actual revenue of the project? That is the classic definition. It's not amorphous. That is pretty much the classic definition. It is used as a vehicle quite often to build on popular things like prisons. I understand why they got to do that. Who's going to vote for a prison? But libraries are not really that all unpopular. Oric is the guy that told, that apparently when this guy came from Oric, wasn't it Oric that told you guys to use Beechwood bonds? Said there was a great financing tool, that it was the way to go. And aren't we paying 8% interest to this day on those bonds, and will be for another 3 years? I would not listen to what the experts tell you when the experts profit from what they're telling you, or at least question it. Thanks.
Thank you, Paulette. Paulette will be our last speaker on this topic.
Hi there. Thanks for giving me the forum to say something about this. I am also a signer of this tax initiative, and honestly, I don't think there should be a problem coming up with 4 out of 5 people to vote for something so important as borrowing money beyond the money that the city takes in from its taxpayers, or from something that's voted on where you get a 2/3 majority and the people in the town say, let's go ahead with something because we all believe in it, and enough people believe in it to make it go forward. Beyond that, yes, we need to make sure that I would like to see everybody. I'd like to see 5 out of 5, honestly. I would like to see total consensus, or at least a super majority, when it comes to borrowing money. It is something you have to do with great responsibility, and I would like to see more council people take responsibility for a decision when it comes to borrowing money beyond the money that comes in as revenue and beyond the money that 2/3 of the majority would vote on for a project. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring it back to council. Comments, discussion, questions? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm honestly troubled that this presentation has come forward this evening. This issue is going on the ballot. The city attorney had his shot at providing his analysis, has done so, and said it, it is okay, that the only thing it's going to do is require a supermajority vote. So, somebody sitting in the audience or at home reading the newspaper about tonight might think that the city is abusing its power prior to an election to influence the outcome of a ballot initiative. So I think the wise thing to do is, at this point, is to do nothing, to let the voters have their say, and if there are problems later on, if someone has an issue with it, they can litigate. But that's the time to do it. So I say let the voters have their say, and I would advise the city council members and city staff to be very careful about what they say and do about this ballot measure between now and election day, because people are going to be looking very closely at potential abuses of the electoral process.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like legal counsel to respond. I think I have a right as an individual to say what I want about a ballot initiative. Is that correct, legal counsel?
Individual council members are certainly entitled to take a position on the initiative. They're certainly entitled to express their opinion about it, and council itself by majority vote can take a council direction in terms of support for and against. Just to briefly respond, Councilmember or Vice Mayor Ruddock's comments about abuse of power or abuse of the process. I assure you, I am very aware of the limitations on electioneering versus informational items. This is important information. I brought it forward as an informational item. I have made no political recommendations either direction. I think it's extremely important for the council to understand the effect of what it's going to either endorse or back or vote for or not. That is why it was brought forward today. And this wasn't brought forward at the request of a council member or the request of a developer or the request of a bond council. It was brought forward after city staff doing due diligence identified this issue with a financial expert. We did our due diligence in following up with an expert outside bond counsel and have brought that information to you. If we didn't do it, I think we'd be running more afoul of our ethical obligations than not, but I respect the council's point, and I will not use any public resources to campaign either way, but I will use the appropriate amount of city resources to provide information to council so it can make educated and informed decisions.
If I may follow up, I think the public has been very vocal with us, and some of you are in this room, about transparency, and I think we need to know what we are going to be voting on. I think that's very important no matter what your position is. So I feel that we were entitled to share this with everyone, and that's why we voted to have legal counsel make his presentation. You know, we all have concerns about funding, but you know, there's times when the city might be in a tighter position and need to borrow some money, and what are we going to do? You know, so I'll be very careful and I won't say much more, but I just think it was appropriate, and I think the public needs to know, and we have to share this with our constituents, and I feel strongly that we can share it.
Other comments? Councilmember Penrose.
Yeah. I have no problem with asking 4 out of 5 council members to approve any project that is going to cost us a lot of money. That's our job. And if 4 out of 5 can't approve it, then there may be something wrong with trying to get that money, taking on that debt. The public has asked that this initiative be presented to everybody so that they can decide, and I feel that we need to let go of it and let the initiative speak for itself. If the majority of people vote against the initiative, then we'll have an answer. But right now, the basic issue, whether it should require 3 or 4 members of council, anything where we go into debt, maybe ought to require 5, but it certainly ought to require 4 out of 5 people.
Thank you, Councilmember Penrose. Councilmember Frazier, nothing? I have a few comments. So my takeaway from the presentation is that if passed, the ballot measure will impact all forms of city financing. As a city and as a city council, I can cite Measure J as an example of us being incredibly responsible with collecting revenue as tax and using it for projects to better our city. Look at our street improvements, look at our park improvements. Measure J and the Measure J Oversight Committee has done an excellent job, and I believe through that, I hope through that, we won the public's trust. That was administered well and it worked out well. And we are just now, this year, Measure J will expire and we will stop receiving revenues from Measure J. The other thing I want to add is that, from my perspective, should this measure pass, ballot measure pass, it would, from my reading, my understanding of this, would prevent our ability to use savings, the savings we're going to get from paying off our debt 20 years early, to finance projects. And that's where I get stuck. So as the mayor, I am taking a position against the ballot measure. I think this council works well together and will continue to work well together without overbearing restrictions on us, especially restrictions that could prevent us from any other form of financing. So I'm taking that position, and I appreciate the information shared with us tonight. Thank you. And with that, I'm moving on to item number 3A, the appeal of Planning Commission's decision to approve a coastal development permit and architectural review for the construction of a fire training tower. But before we do that, we are going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Magic hammer. All right. So agenda item 3A, appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to approve a coastal development permit and architectural review for construction of a prefabricated fire training tower of approximately 50.5 feet at 1191 Main Street. The applicant is the Coastside Fire Protection District. The appellant is Mr. Kevin Lansing. Each will be given, the applicant will be given 10 minutes to speak and may reserve a couple of minutes for rebuttal if you wish. I'll open the public hearing. I guess do we have a presentation first, or we open public hearing? So we'll start with the presentation and then I'll call for the speakers.
Thank you. This is Carol Hamilton, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. I wanted to point out that we provided you some additional correspondence on this issue this evening. A letter from Vance Verderam of Kanata Cove, an additional piece of correspondence from the Coastside Fire Protection District and an email from Stephanie Rexing, a staff person with the California Coastal Commission. The appellant's contention includes four basic points. It contends that the project does not protect views of the inland hills and does not conform to the visual resource standards of the municipal code and the local coastal program, that it's not consistent with the design review criteria and findings of the municipal code, that it's not consistent with the gateway policies of the downtown specific plan, and that it's not in compliance with CEQA. The appellant contends that the project violates the purpose statement of the zoning code, which includes conserve and protect important visual resources within the city, including views of inland hillsides at the eastern edge of the city. Also, that it violates an upland slope visual resource standard, which states that structures shall be sited so as not to intrude above the ridge line when viewed from Highway 1. This contention is based because the project is located adjacent to a PUD, the PUD located across Main Street, which is a visual resource area. All visual resource areas standards apply, including the upland slope standards, not just to those applicable to the PUD. So because it's located adjacent to the PUD and because the PUD is classified as a visual resource area, that all visual resource standards for all other visual resource areas apply to this project. To provide a little background, this item first went to the Planning Commission on December 8th. The 4 citizens spoke at that time. The Planning Commission continued the item to January 26th and requested that the applicant install story poles, provide additional color choices for the tower, and prepare revised renderings that showed the proposed structure in the context of the adjacent buildings. The Planning Commission heard the item again on January 26th. At that time, 15 citizens spoke on the project. The Planning Commission considered the additional information that was submitted by the Coastside Fire Protection District and approved the project on a 3-2 vote. This project site is located on the east side of Main Street at or very near the intersection of Main Street, Higgins Canyon Road, and Highway 1. The aerial view here shows the approximate location of the proposed fire structure on the site. This slide, or this aerial photo, was taken before the pavement and fencing and lighting improvements were installed. The photograph at the bottom right is a view from Main Street. And this photo was taken after the improvements were in place. And you can see in the background of this site a farmhouse right in the center of the picture. And over to the far right, you can just barely see the corner of the Johnston house, which is partially obstructed by the shed. So this fire training tower is a prefabricated structure. It's 4 enclosed stories. They're not conditioned stories, but they're enclosed. The top area is a platform, and the top 7 feet of the structure is open in nature. It has no walls. It just has an I-beam superstructure. The overall height is 50 feet. This elevation, west elevation, is the elevation that would face Main Street. The building is the structure is a metal structure. It has metal clapboard-style siding. There's no exterior lighting on the building. And this elevation, east elevation, is the elevation that would face the agricultural field behind. Here's the site plan. It shows you the relative location and size of the existing Fire Station 40 and the fire training tower on the northerly portion of the site. The operations that are proposed for this training facility will be daily. They'll be mostly during the daytime. One evening per week will be involved. At any one time, there will be up to 3 engine companies training on the site. That would include 3 firefighters per engine company. The building has been configured to allow a number of fire training activities that would reflect the real experience in an emergency situation, and some of those are listed here. It will include live fire. The live fire would be contained to a burn room and would be limited to 15 days per year. The fire district has indicated that they would use 1 or 2 clean pallets per fire, and that there would be no visible flame. The Coastside Fire Protection District is the lead agency for the project. They adopted a final mitigated negative declaration and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program on December 2nd. That environmental document indicated that the project would result in noise and air quality impacts during the construction phase. Mitigation is identified in the mitigated negative declaration for noise and air quality construction and has been included in the conditions of approval for the project. In regard to the visual resource protection assertions of the appeal, staff would respond that the training tower or any other structure on this site will clearly be visible from Highway 1. You can see in the left, we're viewing the site from Seymour and Highway 1, and it's a little more difficult to see from the distant photo, but you can see the top of the training tower peeking up over the fire station. Right there. These particular simulations were based on the actual story poles that were in place, but I would like to point out that the height is shown here represents the total 50-foot height and doesn't indicate the open nature of that top 6 or 7 feet. So it's probably a worst case. And I don't think they're proposing to paint it orange either, so in that respect, it's also a worst case. The training tower does extend above the ridge line, but it will not substantially block views for several reasons. It's got a very small footprint. The tower is fairly slender. The top is partially open. There are a double row of trees along Main Street that block views. The building is set back almost 140 feet from Main Street and is quite distant from the highway. And there is quite a bit of open space between the buildings, or there would be even with this building. Fire Station 40 also extends above the ridge line as viewed from Highway 1. So this shows both the mock-up of the future building and the existing building from Highway 1. And both of those buildings extend above the ridge line at that point. So this site is flat. It is not located on or adjacent to an upland slope, and consequently the upland slope standards do not apply to the site. It is clearly not the intent of the zoning code to apply standards for one visual resource area to a development located in, or in this case, adjacent to other visual resource areas. The implications of such an interpretation are significant and reach far beyond this project. Just for example, if you, based on this interpretation, the Wave Crest PUD standards would apply to the old downtown, and the old downtown standards would apply to the beach viewshed areas. This interpretation applied broadly would mean that all sites located in or adjacent to any PUD would be treated like an upland slope, despite a very clear definition of what an upland slope is. And I mean, also, each of these PUD standards for these PUDs would probably apply to all the other PUDs. In terms of visual compatibility, the training tower's utilitarian character is not an abrupt contrast with the adjacent industrial style buildings and is reasonably compatible. The training tower is taller than the adjacent buildings, but is not incompatible in scale. It has a relatively small footprint, the tower is slender, the open design at the top reduces the visual effect, and it has very large setbacks. And in approving the project, the Planning Commission made architectural review findings of compatibility. The appellant has also indicated that the project is located in an area that's transitioning from residential to rural, and that the project does not provide an appropriate transition in that area, contrary to the requirements of the municipal code. Staff would point out that this project is located between two industrial style buildings at the edge of the city. Both existing and proposed development on Main Street contrasts with the adjacent agricultural uses and with the Johnston House. And this contrast is consistent with the city's land use policy and zoning, which designate properties fronting on Main Street for urban uses and designate land south of Higgins Canyon Road for open space uses, and establish a city boundary along the east and southeast beyond which rural county uses apply. So the fact that there is a distinction between the open agricultural fields and the farmhouses and the development on Main Street is not an accident. The appellant has also suggested that this site has a unified historical character, and based on the municipal code, where an area is determined to have a unified historical character, any proposed development must be consistent with that character. And this is based on the fact that the Johnston House is located proximate to this site. This slide shows the Johnston House, peeking up on the hill there, at the back, through the back of the site. And the Johnston House is located almost a third of a mile away from this project. The project area has no unified design or historical character. There are lots of buildings within a third of a mile, and they differ significantly in age and design. Main Street and downtown can best be described as eclectic. The appellant has also indicated that this project is not consistent with the specific plan because it is located at a gateway intersection. This project is clearly, or this intersection of Higgins Canyon Road, Main Street, and Highway 1 is clearly designated in the specific plan as a gateway intersection. The specific plan policy promotes gateway signage and beautification at that intersection. The project doesn't limit the city's ability to enhance the existing gateway element, and conceptual design for a gateway arch has already been approved by the Planning Commission and City Council on a conceptual basis. The appeal has also indicated that the project is not in conformance with CEQA due to segmentation and the lack of an alternatives analysis. The appeal indicates that the improvements to the site, the pavement that were approved in 2014, should have been handled together with the training tower and been included in the same mitigated negative declaration. And that an alternatives analysis should have been included in the mitigated negative declaration to show alternatives to this project. As we've indicated previously, the Coastside Fire Protection District is the lead agency for this project. They adopted a final negative declaration, and there was no legal challenge to the mitigated negative declaration. The Coastside Fire Protection District has indicated that funding availability influenced the order of their applications, and that the pavement and site improvements had utility for the district that was independent of the training tower. Staff would point out that addressing both applications in this mitigated negative declaration would not have changed its conclusions, and also that the California Environmental Quality Act requires alternatives analysis in the context of an environmental impact report, but does not require them in mitigated negative declarations. Based on the project analysis and as affirmed by the Planning Commission in the findings that it made on the project, staff concludes that the project as conditioned is consistent with the use and development standards of the PS Public Service Zoning District, is consistent with the visual resource protection provisions and other requirements of the local coastal program and zoning code, is consistent with the architectural design criteria and findings of the zoning code, is reasonably compatible with adjacent development, and is consistent with the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. Staff recommends that the City Council deny the appeal, affirm the Planning Commission's decision, and approve the project based on the findings and evidence contained in Exhibits A and B of the resolution, and subject to the conditions of approval contained in Exhibit C. And this completes staff presentation.
Thank you very much. Questions from council for staff? Okay, thank you. I would like to invite a representative from the Coastside Fire Protection District to the podium. Sir, you have up to 10 minutes. And if you would like to reserve some of your time to return, you may do that.
My name is Gary Burke, and I am the current chair of the Coastside Fire Protection District. The mission of the fire district is a very focused mission, and that is to protect and save lives in medical emergencies and natural disasters, including fires, cliff rescues, heart attacks, auto accidents, and other life-threatening incidents. We provide critical service to every person in this room, as well as to 30,000 other people on the coastside, men, women, and children from Devil's Slide to Pescadero. There are three basic essentials needed for the district to meet our fiduciary responsibility to citizens and taxpayers. First, provide modern state-of-the-art equipment, fire engines, tools, etc. Second, hire excellent, motivated employees and management. And third, ensure rigorous, continuous, realistic training for all emergency situations. We have the necessary modern equipment and excellent firefighters and management through our contract with CAL FIRE, many of whom are here this evening. However, we lack a modern first responder training facility. Like all professions, training is the foundation for excellence. The need for a modern training facility in the coastside has been known for some time. In fact, building such a facility was planned some 20 years ago as part of the purchase and building of the new station on the public service lot at the end of Main Street. It was also included in the district strategic plan 15 years ago, but finances and other priorities took precedent. When management recommended a doable plan to address our training issue in May of 2015, the board listened and did its due diligence. We spoke to and received input from firefighters, fire chiefs, visited similar training facilities, and received a recommendation from CAL FIRE, reviewed operational and financial considerations, and so forth. Part of our review was to evaluate the original decision to locate the training facility on our existing lot in Half Moon Bay. The answer soon became obvious. Our other two locations on the coast side were inadequate. Purchasing or leasing land, if possible, presented serious permitting, operational, and financial problems. Major costs for water and sewer, restroom, communications, access and parking for large engines, etc., alone would be more than the cost of the actual training facility. By comparison, our station in Half Moon Bay has all the necessary infrastructure in place and is zoned for public services. In a major policy decision, the board voted unanimously to fund and build the new training facility. There have been 8 agendized public meetings on the training prop, 3 by the city, 5 by the district itself. Approximately 15 people have opposed the project, including individuals speaking multiple times. And we received 2 letters and 1 email in opposition. Unfortunately, among the comments were a number of misstatements, such as the facility would billow smoke, use hazardous material, increase traffic, and would be used as a moneymaker for the district. Of course, all these were untrue. I was also forwarded a flyer from, actually today or early yesterday, from AFOG that is very interesting. It is unsigned. It contains 5 literally factual errors and doesn't even mention the life-saving purpose of the new training facility. By comparison, more than a dozen firms and individuals have taken the time to write in support, including the Half Moon Chamber of Commerce, the Ritz Hotel, Leslie Senior Center, Kenyatta Cove Mobile Home, and I believe you have a package of other letters that the city has received. Speakers in support, either at district or city meetings, have included a broad selection of the community along the coast, including former firefighters, retired military, teachers, former Mayor Partridge, homeowners, all people who place a premium on safety. In part, your staff report recommends denying the appeal and reaffirming the Planning Commission's approval decision. It notes that the project is consistent with the zoning code, the LCP, architectural code, and the final negative declaration addresses the potential environmental impact and identifies mitigation measures to reduce impacts to less than significant level. The Planning Commission found that as conditioned, the project for a CDP and architectural review is consistent with the zoning code, LCP, and municipal code. Approximately 2 hours ago, I received a copy of the letter that I believe the council has also from a staff member of the Coastal Commission. It's very interesting timing on this, to say the least, to do it. I would state that as far as the Coastside Fire District is concerned, the question of appeal is not our issue. That is beyond us and the citizens who are involved in this. I would point out in my brief reading of the report that the Coastal Commission staff report, it focuses on the height, but doesn't even address what is an acceptable height. It doesn't say whether they would pose 50 feet, or is it 45 feet okay, or 43 feet. It just doesn't state it at all. The report goes from questions of the appeal, which apparently was asked by somebody, and then to subjective opinions and justification on facility locations, which, as far as I can see, was not even part of the request to them. The report states, the Coastal Commission staff report state that the facility may not comply with visual protections regulations. That is an opinion of the staff, of course. The staff report is not a Coastside Community board decision. It is strictly a staff issue. Any future building on the empty lot on Highway 1 in the future by the council of the city certainly would have an impact on the visibility of this training tower and block a good deal of it. I would close in just making a couple of minor comments, and that is that I would just recommend and ask the council to approve or to disapprove the appeal, if you will. The COSIDE has a lack of modern first responder training facilities, and that is a very serious life-threatening issue. This facility is a very badly needed public project to better the safety and lives of citizens and first responders. I would respectfully request that you deny the appeal and approve the project, and allow, if necessary, the COSIDE Fire Protection District to deal directly with the Coastal Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lansing? Oh, are there any are there any questions for Gary? No. Okay, we'll ask them later, sir. Thank you.
Could I ask that if Chief Cole might be, he is speaking next, please? Thank you.
Is there still time? We have 3 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and members of the public. Paul Cole, I serve as your chief here, protecting the COSIDE, if you will, responsible for that. And I'd just like to address in the 3 minutes that I have some of the background of why, and addressing some of the elements that have come to my attention on the training facility. First, why here? Well, Director Burke talked about that from the foresight of previous elected officials on the COSIDE Fire Protection District. They saw the need, purchased the property with full intent to build a training facility on there. The idea of having to find some other facility off the coast is not financially feasible or practical for us. The response time to get resources from the bayside to the COSIDE is extensive, and it's something from a risk management standpoint that I frankly and the board, we would not accept. That's the first element. The appellants, I would have to say I commend them. They at the meeting with the Planning Commission made it clear that they appreciate the service that the firefighters provide them. They have really, all of them, nothing but nice things to say about us. But I would also add this to that. I would believe the reason we're appreciated is not for how we look or what we drive, but how and what we do. And I have to tell you, the decision you make tonight impacts how well we're able to do that today and in the future. We need this facility. The facility was designed to meet the threats that exist not only in Half Moon Bay, but also Point Montero. 12,000 people here, but we are responsible for over 30,000. So the decision here affects those that we serve down the line. We need to fight and replicate what is out here. Senior centers, high-rise mid-stories, residential, 1, 2-story. We have to have the ability to flow water, fight fire, search, breach, break. That's what we have to do. We can't pretend. I've been here over 20 years. I served as the operations and training chief here in the mid-90s. I will tell you what I did in the mid-90s, because I've been asked, Chief Cole, what did you do in the past? Here's what we did. We went out to Venice Beach. We used the restroom facilities pretending they were a structure. We would ladder the restroom facility, go on top, and we couldn't sound, we couldn't cut, because we had to come up with some alternative. The reason why we didn't build it then is we didn't have the financial ability to do that. However, we do today. And I would encourage you to realize the decision affects how well we do what we do. We desperately need this, and we're looking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to invite Mr. Lansing to the podium. Mr. Lansing, you have 10 minutes.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Kowalczyk and members of the City Council. My name is Kevin Lansing. I'm a resident of Half Moon Bay, and I'm speaking on behalf of the group who is appealing this project, Citizens for Preserving Half Moon Bay, Preserving Rural Half Moon Bay. And before I begin,
Mr. Lansing, you have a presentation, correct?
Yeah,
let's just wait to get your presentation up so you're ready to go.
Yeah, okay.
that it?
Yep. that's
Okay.
it. And maybe you can maximize it. Control L.
City clerk?
It should be a view mode there that you can make it bigger so people can see it. Control L usually works.
Try Control L.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just before I actually get into the presentation, and just as a kind of an informational point from the point of view of the public, you know, the fee to appeal this project is rather exorbitant. It's $1,300. And I think that, you know, that's 3 times higher than the cost of appealing a project in San Mateo County. So I think at some point the city council might want to revisit this the fee structure they have in place for appeals, because it's simply, you know, almost impossible to appeal a project nowadays in Half Moon Bay, and that's really, you know, it's a right of citizens to do that. Now let me get into the presentation. And so I'm going to start with a summary of our appeal arguments. There's basically 3. First one is that the tower is too tall. It would project above the ridge line when viewed from Highway 1, and that is a violation of the HMB zoning code. I'll get into the specifics of that. The second argument is that it's not compatible with the vicinity, which is the southern gateway of the town. It would represent an eyesore. And basically, in a nutshell, an unsightly industrial tower doesn't belong at the entrance to a town which prides itself on its unique rural character. And that's just not common sense. There's actually policies in the Half Moon Bay Code which basically, you know, codify that. And then the last part of our appeal is that there was defective public notice on every single hearing that this project has undergone. It's a major public works project, and therefore it's automatically appealable to the California Coastal Commission. All previous hearings were improperly noticed, saying that the project is not appealable. That's important for 2 reasons. Number one, that means that a citizen has to pay a fee to appeal the project instead of appealing directly to the Coastal Commission. But that's not necessarily the most important problem. When a project is listed as appealable to the Coastal Commission, that's an important signal to the public that coastal resources that are very valuable are at stake. If you want to build a house near a stream or a wetland or a riparian corridor, those have to be noticed as appealable to the Coastal Commission, because that's a signal that those coastal resources are potentially going to be impacted. Similarly here, but that signal was never given to the public, and that's a serious failure on the part of the noticing from the city's planning staff. So let me get into the first part of our argument. The tower is too tall. Now this is, I'm not sure how well you can see this, but this is a picture that I took myself standing on the western shoulder of Highway 1 looking east. And the story poles are visible there. You can see them definitely projecting above the ridgeline. And that's a violation of the zoning code, which I will talk about in a second. But I would also like you to notice the coastal hills behind, how there's actually no development whatsoever on those hills. It's a pristine, beautiful view of the eastern hills. And now when this tower is going to be built, that view is going to be degraded in a significant manner. Now that is an environmental impact. Okay, any reasonable person looking at that would say that's a significant effect on the environment. Now, the law says when you have a project and it has a significant effect on the environment, you're required to do an environmental impact study. It's a disclosure to the public about these impacts. Now, the fire district didn't do that. They said there was no significant impact of the project on the environment, which is obviously false, because if you look at that picture, you know that's not true. They should have done an environmental impact report, which would have studied alternative designs for the tower, alternative locations for the tower, which I'm going to talk about. But before I do that, let me just go into the parts of the zoning code which tell you that this is in violation. Structures shall be sited so as not to intrude on or project above the ridge line, skyline as seen from highways 1 and 92. Now, this project does that. According to the city planning staff, this section of the code doesn't apply to this project because it is in the section called upland slopes. Now, there's 2 arguments that negate the city staff's claim. One is, if you just look at, there's another part of the code that says, headings contained herein shall not be deemed to govern, limit, or modify the meaning or intent of any section hereof. So this provision about protecting the ridge line, even though it's under the upland slopes, doesn't mean it doesn't apply. The second argument is that if you look at the upland slopes definition, it says it includes areas and then goes into some specifically named parcels. It includes those areas. It doesn't say it's only those areas. So this section of the code applies to this project. And there's other parts of the code that explicitly state the intent of the HMZ zoning code to protect views of the eastern ridge skyline as seen from Highway 1. And actually, if you look at the Coastal Commission staff's letter that the city received yesterday, they mention this aspect specifically. This 50-foot training tower is 23 feet taller than the theater, which is right next door, and it's 15 feet taller than the fire station. So that tells you that a shorter tower would not necessarily violate this section of the zoning code. So that's where this alternative designs and alternative locations idea comes in. But let's talk about alternative designs. Here's two. This is coming from Fire Facilities Incorporated. This is the same company that would produce the 50-foot tower that the fire district wants to buy. These are 35 feet tall. But you can see they're multi-story structures. They are, going to provide the kind of training that the fire district says it needs in order to learn how to fight fires in multi-story buildings that are the kind that we see around town. So this is a kind of thing that could have been studied if the fire district had done an environmental impact report, but they didn't. Let's talk about alternative locations. Okay, so this is an example. This, again, from the same company that the fire district wants to buy their tower from. This is one that's been in use for a few years in Illinois, and you can see it's not necessarily something that would be visually appealing at the gateway to a town that prides itself on its unique rural character. It looks like something that you might see in the blighted section of a decaying city. Here's a picture of the tower that's over in South San Francisco at a time when it's undergoing this active fire training. You can see it's billowing smoke, which certainly is not going to represent some kind of a visually appealing aspect of a town that, again, prides itself on its rural character. But again, these ideas are not something that just, comes out of the thin air. They're actually in the code. If you look at what the code says about visual resources, there's lots of statements in there that says these should be protected, and it gives you very clear guidance. I'll just go through a bit here. Conserve and enhance important visual resources within the city, including views of the inland hillsides at the eastern edge of the city. So that's very clear. Allow development only when it is visually compatible with the character of the surrounding area. The proposed development shall be compatible in terms of height, bulk, and design with other structures in the immediate area. Now remember, this tower is 23 feet taller than the adjacent theater, 15 feet taller than the adjacent fire station. I would say no reasonable person could say that that's compatible in terms of height. Can you imagine if your neighbor was going to put an addition on their house and it was going to be 15 feet taller than your house or 23 feet taller? No one would say that that's compatible. Buildings shall be so designed and constructed that they will not be of unsightly or obnoxious appearance. Again, remember the tower that I showed you that had been used for a few years, or the one that was billowing smoke. These certainly are unsightly. Enhance the visual appeal of the principal gateways into the downtown area. This tower would do the opposite. And the scenic and visual qualities of a coastal area shall be considered and protected. So basically, the Coastal Act says that visual resources are just as important as things like wetland resources, riparian resources, environmental habitat. This is a resource that needs to be protected. Now, most communities have the good sense to locate these structures in areas where they're not going to represent an eyesore, and this is where the one in South San Francisco is located. It's in an out-of-the-way place adjacent to a lumber yard. It's certainly not at the entrance to the city, and so we should follow their example. That's just basic good planning practice. Now, let me come to the last part of our appeal argument, which is this idea of all the public notices for this tower project were defective. And the code states that when a project is in the appeal jurisdiction zone, the notice of the public notice that the city is required to put out has to state that. Now, here's the public notice for tonight's hearing. It was published in the Half Moon Review on February 17th, and it basically says that this project is not within the is not located in the California Coastal Commission appeals jurisdiction. Now, the city staff report basically has said that this project is appealable. They basically agree with us. So they are basically upholding our argument on this part of the appeal. But that's important because it says that every single hearing on this project has defective public notice. Now that's important because, again, what is the purpose of this part of the code? It's to give this public a signal that important coastal resources are at stake. Now, this project never gave that signal and was allowed to fly under the radar, and so that people were not aware of what was going on. Okay, and now we have a project that went through 3 public hearings with defective public notice. So I will then wrap up. And I'll just finish here. Basically, the structure shall be sited so as not to intrude or project above the ridgeline skyline as seen from Highways 192. That section of the code applies to this project, and it's a showstopper. All projects must comply with the law, including those which seek to improve fire safety. Now, again, this project is, of course, the fire district needs some training facility. That doesn't mean it doesn't have to comply with the law. And the city's southern gateway is the wrong place for a tower like this. Now, let me just then end with this final thought. Life rarely presents you with an opportunity for a do-over, okay? But I think right now we're presented with such a situation. The environmental review of this project, it should have considered alternative designs and alternative locations. They did not do that. The project has serious flaws in terms of compliance with the law, and if you uphold the appeal, you will motivate consideration of better alternatives on any resubmitted project. And so we would urge the City Council to uphold this appeal and deny the permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to ask the City Council if there is consensus. I have many cards, 15. Is there consensus to go for a 2-minute public comment with a little bit of latitude if necessary? Okay. So public comment period will be 2 minutes. First person is Jimmy Benjamin, followed by Gary Burke. Oh, I'm sorry, Gary already spoke. Sorry, Jimmy Benjamin.
Good evening, Commissioners. There's a presentation, so if you could just hold my time until we get our
We will certainly will hold the time.
I appreciate that, sir. So good evening, Mayor Kowalczyk, members of the staff and City Council, Jimmy Benjamin in Half Moon Bay. I wanted to speak specifically to the visual resources intrusion above the daylight plane. But before I start, let me just commend the fire district. I'll reiterate what I have said at every meeting. I think that they do a great job. We appreciate them. We value them. Many of us campaign for that board and we support them. The fact that we disagree with them on this particular project should not be construed as disapproval. And I appreciate Chief Cole's comments earlier recognizing our sensitivity to that. I hope that this dialogue will never descend into the demagoguery that sometimes occurs here in the city. So with that thought, let me just say that the key here for me, let's see if I can get this to click, is to talk briefly about some of the points in the staff report. And usually I give you a tome of lots of details. I'm going to try to stay close to the surface for us tonight. The staff analysis discussed an analysis predicated on the definition of upland slopes. But a reading of our appeal reveals that we don't use the definition of upland slopes. Our definition says if the project goes above the ridgeline into the skyline, it violates the visual resource ordinance. It's really that simple. The upland slopes argument just doesn't come to bear. And it refers to policies that are specific to some PUDs in the analysis. But we don't need those policies. We're not citing them. It may well be that this project complies with some of those policies. But to be approved, it has to comply with all of the policies. And in this case, we have identified zoning ordinance issues that are clearly a problem for this project. However, the city does point out that the PUD is in fact a visual resource, and we appreciate the recognition of that. The section of code 183705 requires that the visual resource standards meet not only at the PUDs, but in the areas adjacent. So the city recognizes that these visual resource standards apply. I'll accelerate to close the item. Then just to amplify the concern that the policy on the right-hand side that requires the structures not to project into the skyline through the ridge line, it doesn't say anything about if you're located on an upland slope, or if you're located at the beach, or if you're located in a PUD. It applies generally. And the only reason it could be associated with that is because the thing we're looking at happens to be an upland slope. But the section of code on the left makes it clear that those section headings are not a restriction on the applicability of this piece of ordinance. Our laws are designed to protect us from making decisions on the cuff that can cause us emotional harm. We are not a banana republic. You are not that kind of junta that makes decisions based on what you might like or not like. I'm asking you to honor the law. It's really that simple. And to do so is not to deny the importance of the Coastside Fire Protection District and the San Mateo County Fire Department's legitimate need for a structure. Thank you for your tolerance of my overage.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Bruce McKimmey, followed by Lynn Murphy.
Good evening, Council. My name is Bruce McKimmey, out of Moss Beach, been on the coast side a long time. Currently, I'm on the Board of Directors, one of 5 Board of Directors that voted yes for this project. I also served the coast side as a firefighter for 15 years. I attacked the Venice Beach restrooms on many of an occasion. Would have been nice to have a training tower to help serve the citizens of the coast side. The Planning Commission approved this project. I hope that the council would deny the appeal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your brevity. Lynn Murphy, followed by Shirley Holly.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Murphy, and I work for Leslie Senior Communities. I believe last session Sarah Lambert was here, and she's out of the country, so I'm here on her behalf and the behalf of the seniors that we serve locally here in Half Moon Bay. We serve over 300 seniors in the housing, affordable housing, kind of the village there with Mid-Peninsula Housing and Leslie Gardens, Ocean View Plaza, the Coastside Adult Senior Center, as well as Adult Day Health Care Center there. So my role is Director of Social Services. So I am there as an advocate for our seniors. I'm there to listen, to help support, to help protect those that are most vulnerable. And some of our seniors are the most vulnerable. As they age, and age in place is what we provide housing for them to be able to do. We serve people in their 80s, 90s, and beyond. And their safety is their first most concern. And knowing that they have a wonderful fire department here to help them, to provide the safe assurance that if there's a fire, that there's excellent service. This training tower, as I understand it, just gives that realistic opportunity for the firefighters here to have the utmost training to be at capacity to serve in emergency situations that we have experienced and could experience greatly in the future. I work over in San Mateo. My office is at Leslie Towers, used to be referred to as Park Towers. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's a 12-story building, and our response at our local community has been so reassuring to our seniors. We had a gentleman that was disabled and was on oxygen, and our firefighters had to climb those stairs and help him. So I just want to encourage the thought about how this can really continue to prevent a lack of training and encourage the utmost safe training for this community and for everyone here. So thank you for your time, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you for your comments and for your work in the community. Shirley Holly, followed by this name. I'll come back to that name. Followed by Paul Grigoriev.
Good evening, City Council and City staff. I'm Shirley Holly.
As a member of the NET project, I just wanted to mention that I really enjoyed the cultural diversity and the ethnic diversity, and I look forward to experiencing more of that. Jim and I saw the great cement pad being constructed by the fire station, and we didn't even know what it was. It was huge, and it is huge. Of course, the issue is not, do we need a training facility for our wonderful firefighters? We all know that we need a training facility. The issue is the location. It's a bad location. And from other speakers, I gather that due diligence was not conducted to make sure that the requirements were met for getting all of that prepared and okayed. So I only have one question. Why not locate the tower in a less visible place with less impact on our town? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul, followed by Jane Hillhouse, I think. Jane. Okay, thank you.
We'll get situated here. Good evening. My name is Paul Grigoriev. And I'd like you to uphold the appeal and deny the permit for the project. I also believe it's important that you consider whether or not the applicant for the permit was dealing properly with the city and with CEQA requirements when it made the permit applications for the overall project. Let me explain. The complete fire tower project appears to have two parts, with a total cost in excess of $1.5 million. However, the project wasn't presented to the city this way. First, the district requested and received a permit to pave the large swath of land surrounding the tower for a cost of over $500,000. Then later, the district came back for a second permit, the one that's currently before you on appeal, to build the training tower for an additional $1 million. The photo on page 124 of your packet demonstrates the point that the two smaller projects are in fact part of one single large construction project. If you turn to page 124, you can see this image. The photo shows that the parking lot poured in the first project already contained the keyhole for the foundation of the tower that would be proposed in the second project, a keyhole into which the tower would later fit perfectly. It is possible that breaking the project into two parts like this is an example of what's called project segmentation. And although the city may feel it's outside their jurisdiction to remedy the segmentation of the project, it is still not right for an applicant for a CDP to mischaracterize a project when requesting a permit. So to paraphrase the well-known words of another advocate, if you see the fit, you should not permit. In conclusion, I strongly urge you to uphold the law and grant tonight's appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Jane Hillhouse, followed by Paulette Eisen. Jane? Good bit, right? Paulette? John?
All right, good evening. I am, let's see, first of all, I was staggered by the cost of putting an appeal into the city. That's just outrageous, and something has to be done about that. It's unacceptable, that kind of cost. I'm asking the council to reconsider the approval of the Planning Commission to erect a fire tower at the south entrance to Half Moon Bay. Now, let's be clear. I don't know if you're aware, it was a 3-2 decision. First of all, it was not a majority decision. I mean, it was a majority, 3-2. It wasn't a unanimous at all decision. There are two of the planning commissioners, as much as you could tell how much they were struggling to give the no vote, but what they said is they need to follow their laws. And based on the zoning laws, this was a height that was unacceptable and intrusive to the whole vista of the town. and to be at the south entrance of the town. You know, you're coming into Half Moon Bay. And now, here's the part that really disturbs me, regardless of whether they voted yay or nay, is I don't believe that any of the 5 members on the Planning Commission have actually visited a whole bunch of fire towers, which I have subsequently done, have seen a fire tower in action, of the type of routine that they're going to have here, the practices, that the drills that they're going to have here. So I don't think that they were in any way, shape, or form prepared to make an informed decision, and that is disturbing because it wasn't an informed decision. And, you know, all of us care about the beauty of this town. We want it to get even better looking, more charming, have a really lovely town for us to be in. So that's what you need to all do, is do that exercise. Go and look at these fire towers, talk to people around there, and see where they're located. Are they located next to housing like this would be? This is very close to where our housing is. You know, and ask people, get the impact. I mean, the research wasn't done. That's the problem, the biggest problem I have with the whole process. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve Patton, followed by Steve Stockman.
Hello, Council. Thanks for giving me the chance to speak. My name is Stephen Patton. I'm a lifetime resident of the Coast Side since 1978, living on the coast. Full disclosure, I am potentially going to work on the project if it's approved to design the foundation elements. But that said, I'm a homeowner in Half Moon Bay, and I'm here speaking as a homeowner in favor of the project. The importance of public safety can't be overseen. It seems like, to me, we're talking about a view which is partially obstructed, that, you know, there's already buildings that are obstructing all views all up and down Highway 1. I think that the public safety needs to be number one, most important. Personally, I think the view would be improved. It matches the buildings that are next to it. So, you know, on that opinion. And I think it's important to understand to be financially responsible in considering, I've heard mention of alternate sites. This is the ideal site for this location. It's next to an existing facility. All of the utilities are in place or within close proximity. I would challenge the people who are appealing it to find a site that is better suited for this particular location. It's the largest station. It's a brand new facility, not brand new, but very new fire facility right next door. It's got all the resources there. As a homeowner in Half Moon Bay, I urge you to strongly consider public safety and financial responsibility for the importance of this project, and I'll end there. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Steve Stockman, followed by Chad Hooker.
Thank you, Council, for letting me speak. I would consider myself a public safety advocate. I've served 35 years in the fire service. That career began as a volunteer here in Half Moon Bay. I was also raised on the coast. I've raised my family here on the coast. I'm blessed to have my parents live on the coast, my siblings, my children, and my grandchildren. So this is a very real cause for me, as that it's about protecting their safety, their lives, all my neighbors' lives. This tower, from my career experience, there's no substitute for having a facility of this design to strengthen the safety of all coastsiders. As a lifetime coastsider, I honor and respect the process and the individuals that have worked to make this community what it is. And it is a jewel. There's three main points I would like to make. Intent, effect, and timing. The intent of this project is sound. It's good. It's to serve and for all Coastsiders. The effect will be positive. My neighbors that are finding negatives to this project, I believe that they do not really properly understand the project and its intended use. Their comments tell me that they haven't been listening to the dialogue. And it'll make the community safer. And 3, the timing. The project should not be built now. It should have been built 15 years ago. We're already behind the ball on it. We're trying to catch up and move into the future training. I will respect their time and okay. The height is dictated a lot by the height of the Ritz-Carlton. The back side of that building is over 6 stories tall. You cannot duplicate it. When you show another facility, that has no proper reference because we're trying to make a facility that meets the needs of the coast side. There was a comment that says the laws that we have are to protect from emotional harm. Well, I'm here to speak about the real harm, the possibility of death and harm to our citizens. I'll deal with the emotional harm of that view. And the facility that I worked with, the agency, was a very large fire district. It served over 9 communities, and our fire tower was built on the perk ponds in Campbell and was surrounded by housing. It functioned very well without any resistance. I ask that you deny this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chad Hooker, followed by J.B. Cockrell.
Good evening, Council. I know that your time limitation is normally 3 minutes, so I prepared some comments trying to stay within that, so I'll read quickly. My name's Chad Hooker. I live here in Half Moon Bay. I've been here for 40 years. In the interest of full disclosure, you should know that I have worked for the fire district in the past. I was the owner's representative to the city of Half Moon Bay and also to the general contractor when Station 40 was built in the 90s. And more recently, I've been a construction consultant for the district to help them get this training slab in place. And the site work planned, permitted, bid, awarded, and installed. But I'm speaking now as a local citizen, a taxpayer, and as a member of the board of directors of the Adult Day Health Center, which is located in the seniors community, and as a fire protection district constituent. Regarding that last thing, I'm really hoping not to need their capable services, but if I ever do, I'm counting on them to arrive promptly, well-equipped, well-trained, and fully capable. Frankly, that's what all of us expect of the fire service here and generally throughout the United States. So you need to make a decision tonight. I'd like to point out that the decisions all of us make, the decisions you need to make tonight, need always to be made with a weighing of the factors that we are considering. Some factors are simply more important than others. As the prior speaker pointed out, visual resources matter. Saving lives may matter more. I think it does. In that light, I would suggest that the safety of the community and its visitors and the safety of our firefighters who protect us all trump the aesthetic concerns that have been voiced regarding this training tower. I think this council has a responsibility to the community at large to help the fire district provide the best quality fire protection services they can. People outside the fire service with no knowledge or experience in this critical and dangerous field can make arguments about visual resources or perceived gateway to town, but what do they really know about what it takes to prepare a fireman dressed in full turnout gear to save an elderly disabled person from the 3rd floor of the senior center? What about the guest who's fallen asleep with a cigarette at the top floor of the Ritz? You got a hotel fire. Who are you going to call? You're going to call those guys. They'll be there, but they have to be trained. This training structure will not despoil the beauty of the coast or ruin the south entrance to town. Most people will drive right by this thing and never even notice that it's there. I encourage you to balance that against the importance of the training for which it's intended. Just a couple other quick points. I need to mention that there has been the standard argument that the structure isn't the problem, it's just the wrong place. But no one has proposed a viable alternative place with public service zoning and accessibility. Additionally, there is no better place because the fire service and its land, its equipment, its resources Its training yard and its hydrants are all located there in the public service zoning, specifically designated for that use on that property by a prior city council. That's why it was built there. And it's big enough for the training yard as always planned. It's already built and paid for by us, the taxpayers. So I encourage you to put your unanimous signature of approval on this important safety installation. I'd like to mention one further thing, and that is that because of my history working with the fire district and my history on this particular project, if this discussion about segmentation gets any traction tonight, I'd appreciate an opportunity to address that with facts rather than erroneous opinion, because I know what happened. I was involved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. J.B. Cockrell, followed by Vince Williams.
Good evening, I'm J.B. Cockrell, a member of the Coastside Fire Protection District. I'm one of the directors, I guess I'm trying to say. Makeup of the directors is we have Ginny McShane, longest serving director, retired educator. We have Harvey Rarbach, a resident here of Half Moon Bay, a retired physicist. We have Bruce McKinney from Moss Beach. He's a retired firefighter. Myself, I'm currently a full-time corporate pilot, former airline pilot. Gary Burke, and a retired businessman, also from Half Moon Bay. Now, one of the things we're charged with is evaluating what's important. We do that regularly, and we also charge with managing your money. In other words, we can't build pies in the sky. We have to have rational reasons, and we agreed as part of our mission statement to manage your resources respectfully. And I must commend the majority of the people in this room who made a very important vote a few years ago. The vote was right and is proving to be correct. We now have the resources we need to provide you the services you deserve, not just you, but the upwards of 30,000 people. I understand the latest count is 34,000 people that live here. In addition, the thousands of people who come here to visit on weekends. So one of the things I'm hearing is opinions. Now, we're all entitled to our own opinions, and I happen to agree with that. However, we're not entitled to our own facts. And I'm hearing a number of things that are factually incorrect and a number of opinions that, quite frankly, are laughable. About the view, it won't be that many years before the trees overshadow anything you may hope to look in that direction. I know that from my own house when I used to have a beautiful view of the ocean, and that's been gone for at least 20 years, when formerly I had an unobstructed view of the ocean. The trees that are already planted that you've seen on these slides, I assure you, will make any view east not really important. Now, one of the things I know is that people don't come to the coast to look east to see hills they could see from their home in Fremont. They come here to see the ocean, and I think the fire tower will not block the views of the ocean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Vince Williams, followed by John Owen.
My name is Vince Williams. I'm a resident of Sunnyvale and a former resident of the Coastside. I've been active in Coastside Fire Board politics for the past 13 years. Under the California Health and Safety Codes, I'm a stakeholder in this issue, even though I don't live in Half Moon Bay. This agenda item is, I'm going to speak directly so I can keep my comments short. This agenda item is a wave the flag exercise for the Half Moon Bay obstructionists. I'd encourage City Council members not to participate beyond what is required by the law. This appeal is a combination of 11th hour backroom dealing with the Coastal Commission staff, a bunch of jailhouse lawyering of city codes in the Half Moon Bay LCP that all boils down to a single issue of whose photos are to be trusted over a purely aesthetic issue of the view to the east. I would encourage council members to contrast this appeal with the professional applications and supporting documentation of Coastside fire staff with decades of experience, the unanimous CFPD board with decades of combined experience, the Half Moon Bay city staff, and the Half Moon Bay Planning Commission's approval. Tonight, I'll ask the City Council members the same question I will ask the Coastal Commissioners: should they themselves and not their staff be conned into accepting an appeal? After having approved multi-story buildings in Half Moon Bay, do you want to assume the liability for emergency responses should there be a fire, earthquake, tsunami, or other natural disaster after this body presumes to know more than the professionals at CAL FIRE with decades of experience. The professional architects, the city planners, and the City Planning Commission, or are you here to play with taxpayer money supporting obstructionists? The Beechwood debacle should have taught the City Council caution in reviewing projects. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. John Ullum, followed by Dave Shore.
Thanks for having me up here. This one's really tough. I support the idea of what they want. I think it's, for the most part, not really a big issue. But I'm severely disappointed with the way the board has gone about getting this done. For example, you've been told that we had plenty of times that we could have gone to meetings and appealed or complained about this project. Fire board meetings start at 6 p.m. It's pretty damn hard for most people in this town to make fire board meetings at 6 p.m. I like to think that I pay attention, know what's going on. I saw that big cement pad going up, wonder what it was. I had no idea there was a fire prop, if that's how it's supposed to be called, was being installed there until Clay wrote an editorial in support of it. I don't think that the idea that the story poles went up after the permit has been issued, or just before, after the first round or whatever, flat out crazy. If you wanted to see public participation, you put those story poles up at the beginning, and then you'll see some public participation. We've heard people challenge us to find a better location, question people's, I don't know, right to have a comment because they're not experts on putting out fires. This is divisive rhetoric that is not necessary for a project that is, in my opinion, well justified. But I would ask yourselves, if this is such an important thing, and if this is such a vital concept and so important to our safety, why aren't we renting the tower up in South San Francisco for the last decade? So I'd have to question whether people are really, how sincere they are being when they try to phrase this issue as being a community safety issue with no other alternative to, providing it. Should be noted that San Mateo County is coming over here to use that fire tower, that they're paying for part of it. Good enough for them to drive over the hill. So I don't really get the logic of how this is being sold to us. And I don't think it's necessary, because in the end I support the project. I think it's a great idea. The finances do work out. I think with some minor revisions to height and architecture, everybody can live with it. Thanks.
Thank you. Our last speaker on this topic will be Dave Shore.
Good evening, council, staff, and fire department, and members of the public. My name is Dave Shore. I'm a resident of Half Moon Bay. Before I begin my comments, I just want to point out that the lead appellant, Kevin Lansing, is a former Planning Commission member. So I think he has some degree of experience and credibility in bringing this appeal to council. So please consider that. To summarize, because time is short, the project is too ugly for Main Street. Any other homeowner or business owner who brought a project like this to this part of town would be laughed out of Planning Commission and laughed out of City Council chambers, flat out. There's no two ways about it. Beyond that, as has been pointed out by several people, yes, you have a responsibility to support the fire department. There's no denying that. But you need to do it within the bounds of the law. As has been pointed out by numerous people, this project does not comply with provisions of the city's own code, nor with that of the California Coastal Commission. And I really must point out, having read the memo that came to Mr. Ambo yesterday, that in this matter, the Coastal Commission bats last. Given all the uncertainty or the discrepancies and debate about this, I think you'd be economizing on everybody's effort and expense to either deny this project, in other words, uphold the appeal tonight, or at the very least, continue it for further investigation, such as visiting other fire towers in other districts and seeing what they really look like and if this is appropriate for our southern gateway. Beyond that, it's simply incompatible with the location as proposed. You need to obey the laws as is codified by the Coastal Commission and by City Code. But I really hate going negative, but I really must echo some comments that I'm quite disturbed by the way this project has gone through. True, the fire department and not the city was the lead agency, but the city has been complicit in the segmentation and the piecemealing of this project explicitly. I was told by Mr. Ambo that the permit for the pad was granted only after the pad started to get poured. In other words, the fire department proceeded with construction without a permit. The permit was then granted for a continuous slab with no cutout or keyhole and no utilities stubbed up for the next phase of the project, which was the fire tower. All of these are factors which you really must consider. Bottom line, too ugly for Main Street, doesn't comply with the law. Please uphold the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Our new last speaker is Mike Alifano.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Kowalczyk, staff, CAL FIRE, Coastside Fire Protection District board members here. My name is Mike Alifano. I live at 660 Magnolia. I've been there since 2000, but I've been born and raised here on the coast. I was a fire board director for several years. I don't always agree with the board members here, but I do agree with them this time. And I think it is a project that will benefit the safety of all of our coast, not just Half Moon Bay. And I live literally a block and a half away from this. And it is between two commercial type buildings, the fire department and coastal rep. When people talk about the gateway coming into town, you know, I think about after Rice Trucking coming in. Once you get into town, which is right after the fire department, there's James Ford. I mean, the list goes on. My other issue too is, you know, we have all this high density, 3-story senior housing, and we need to be able to provide the ability for them to train. And I think it's crucial. I think it's a public safety issue. I think they've done a good job saving the money so they can pay for this. I talked to Paul Cole today about it, and I would hope that you would deny the appeal and move forward with this. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mike. With that, I'll close the public hearing. I'm sorry, would either Mr. Lansing or somebody from the fire district wish to make any final comments before we bring it back to council? Seeing no nods, bring it back to council. Questions, commentary, discussions from council?
So I understand from Carol Hamilton that there will be no visible flames during live burns, but will there be smoke? Visible smoke?
You may want to address that to the fire district. However, I do believe there will be smoke. I think that's identified in the initial study, and the fire district has indicated that as well.
So I'm assuming that it says training will happen daily, and that includes weekends and holidays? Is that the assumption?
Feel free to approach the mic, sir, if you want to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To address your question about smoke, yes, ma'am. There'll be two types of smoke. We need to contain the smoke inside the structure. So what we want to do is lock that down somewhat tight to allow the smoke to build so the firefighters have to make their way through the smoke. The smoke on the 15 days a year will be from the pallet that we're going to burn, the single pallet that's in a bin. The intent is to not have any direct flame outside rolling out. Some of the pictures that the appellant showed, I could speak at length with 30 years in this business of saying some of those were flashover rooms on a single story down below intentionally to lap out of a window. We didn't design that tower for that. Secondly, we have theatrical smoke. On the days that we're not going to be burning, we have plumb piping that allows us to take an environmentally safe product, soundstage smoke, and pump that into the building. We remove that smoke once the fire has been actually knocked down, and then it becomes a combination of steam and smoke. And if you look at it, it's not billowing black smoke. It's very clean, opaque, and it really, it's the amount of smoke that's produced by one single pallet is really not all that much. So,
the training on the weekends and holidays, is it?
No, ma'am, we're very sensitive when we say holidays on the coast side. We have always been a great neighbor to the theater. We recognize that. I'm sorry. We're a great neighbor to the theater, so we're respectful of their events. We're respectful on the weekends, especially a holiday when we know we have traffic coming over. We refrain from training on those days, especially on those holidays. We're more in that preparation mode of responding to calls. But there may be the occasional non-recognized President's Day on a Monday that we may have scheduled training, but for the large part, we don't train typically on the holidays. We do train because of the rotation of our crews. We have people that only work during the weekend elements. They don't work on the front end of the week, and they need to be trained as well.
Thank you.
So staff, yes. Your mic's not on.
Oops.
Keeps going off.
Yeah. The conditions of the project allow training activities daily between 8 and 5, except that they're also allowed between 7 and 9 one night a week. So those are the current conditions of the permit, and that was based on what was asked for by the fire district.
Come on. So I'd like to thank everyone for their comments, and I'd like to thank our professional staff for reviewing this. And just a very short answer. It's been mentioned a number of times that we have not followed the law. I just need to get that clear first before I continue on with my comments. So if we could have
I've heard a number of I don't know if I would, assertions that the city somehow didn't follow law. I haven't heard anything specific that I can respond to. Do you have a particular comment that you're looking for? And most of these things, like the idea of CEQA segmentation.
I think it was about noticing.
About the noticing question, specifically noticing.
And I think that wasn't the city, actually. I think that was the fire district. But
that's right. So if you look at the city's municipal code, Title 18, 20060, that's the notice required provision, and I'll read it to you. The city shall provide notice of all applications for a coastal development permit as follows. Subpart A6. A brief description, this is the contents of the notice. A brief description of the review process for the CDP, including where applicable hearings, public comment periods, submission of public comments, any requirements for coastal resource reports, local action and appeals. The next sentence is, where the proposed development is located and with the appealable area of the coastal zone, the notice shall state that local actions are appealable to the Coastal Commission. In this case, the proposed development is not located within the appealable area of the coastal zone. It is appealable as a major public works project. So when you read the actual language that applies to the city's notice provisions, the city is in compliance. It indicated that the project was appealable to City Council, as the code only requires an indication of California Coastal Commission appealability in cases where it's located within the appeals zone of the Coastal Commission. So it's a nuance, it's a distinction, but staff had been operating correctly.
Thank you. If I may continue on, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just thank the District Board of Directors for participating this evening and for having the foresight to move forward with this training tower. I don't think there's anything more important for all of us involved as the safety of humans and animals. But I think more importantly, I want the safety of those individual first responders, women and men, to be trained to provide that safety. And if you don't think we've reviewed some information, there's 300 pages here in front of us that I reviewed. And when we're talking about training, we're talking about our coast side, not just Half Moon Bay. We're talking El Granada, Montera, Pescadero, La Honda, Skylonda. Come on, folks. We're talking about thousands of people that are involved in this process in this training tower. And I did, to the speaker's concern, I did visit training towers. And one is right on California Drive, right in a residential area, Burlingame, or Central Fire, I believe it's called now. Foster City, they still burn. They're over the bay. And when we're talking about smoke, I was on the tractor Saturday morning. The barbecues are burning on Francis State Beach. I think there's more smoke coming with the residential neighbors in that area than there will be out of a pallet being burnt there. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was getting hungry, smelling the hot dog smells coming, because you all know our breezes are a westerly, northwesterly breeze that are coming. March, we're getting the canyon winds that come down, and that just means it's not going to rain there. So I think in the location, you want that tower in a place where they're training, because look at the calls they're getting. Look at how many people are being assisted on the coast, whether it's minor or major. I heard sirens this evening coming over here, and we're all hearing those. They're getting plenty of calls. We're looking at the power poles. Every picture there showed utility poles, and I can tell you they're over 40 feet. They're 40, most of them are 40 feet, some are up to 45 feet. And all those pictures had wires in there. I don't see a big concern about visual corridor there. I also talked to the farmer, who is an adjacent property owner. They've been there for 3 generations. There's no concern with the agricultural operation there. And I believe this project is, as the speaker stated, way behind schedule. If you look at some of the appellate's concerns of a building in Iowa or Illinois or wherever, they're not rappelling down cliffs. They're not going over Devil Slide, saving individuals like they all do in this room. So I think that you got to really compare geographic areas, as it was mentioned there. So I can tell you from the onset of this, if we're within the law, our staff has done a professional job. I'm in total support of denying the appeal.
Thank you, John. Other comments, discussion? Councilmember Frazier.
Through the chair, could we have Chief Cole come back up?
Chief.
Thank you, Chief. And I think there's no doubt that everyone here does value and treasure what our firefighters do. I mean, that I think we can all agree on. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, Chief, is you talked about some of the smoke. There was only 15 times that you'll have smoke, but the daily activities that'll be going on. You know, we have our cliffs on the bluff tops, as well as over the senior facilities, 2- and 3-story buildings. Can you talk about, I mean, are they going to running up and down with hoses? What do firefighters in the 21st century do these days?
There's some basic requirements that all firefighters have to meet in their basic training. What we did when we started looking at the type of prop that we wanted to bring in, at first it had to meet the threat, the existing threat that we serve from, as you pointed out, from Devil Slide south. And what we really did in looking at the architects, the structural element, is we wanted to say, how do I deal with that rescue on the top floor of the Ritz? What happens if at that 6th floor level somebody is trapped and we need to pull them down? So we had to have some height element that allowed us to replicate that. Our ground ladders go to 35 feet. How do I use that ladder? An aerial that goes to 75 feet. Maybe we need 100. So that was that, when you look at the tall part of that tower, that was to address that element. You had mentioned that to get the hose lines up there takes time and effort. The firefighters have to put it onto their shoulders, start to work their way up the stairwell, and then eventually tie in and then advance that hose line down into where the fire may be. So the lower part of that particular structure took on the Leslie Garden Senior Center hallway construction. It allowed me to make access through a stairwell, also internal and external stairwells. I can go into this facility and configure the walls to replicate your residential home. I can do the same thing with a larger area, more of a commercial type occupancy. When we show up on any type of fire, it's a coordinated event, meaning that every single engine company that shows up is orchestrated through the first arriving officer with certain priorities, life, safety, and we talk about the environment. That first engine company may have to force entry, get a hose line into place to just stop the fire, hold it. So we practice on that. Second engine company may have to establish a water supply, throw a ladder, maybe get above the fire to open it up. Or, God forbid, we find out that we have somebody trapped, and then the efforts there go into rescuing them. An additional element is that we lose approximately 43 firefighters a year on the fire ground. We're not talking about the heart attacks. We're talking about the firefighters that are lost, trapped, run out of air, incapacitated, fallen through floors, and we need to be able to train realistically on how we will deal with being trapped, and this facility allows us. Going downtown on the single story, 1,600-foot residential occupancy. We're prepared to get on top of it. Now we can take our saws and on this prop, actually start to saw and cut holes into the roof, allowing us to punch through and let what we call the products of combustion, that smoke kind of get out in that flame so that the area opens up and we can find the seat of the fire, find that victim. So when you look at the tower as a whole, elements were designed around what we have on the coast side. Throwing a ground ladder, forcing a door, all those things are built in, and every day, to whatever level there may be one firefighter out there practicing throwing a ladder to bring somebody down out of a balcony. It could be the training chief having a new person come in. Hey, how do I open that metal door that goes in commercially behind Safeway? We have the ability now to do this. I stated, I've been here a long time. Training has been my passion. I've been training for decades. I can tell you firsthand the value of that. And if I may share something briefly, our most latest fire, and we don't have a lot of them, and I think needs to be pointed out. Thankfully, in this community, and I say that thankfully, we don't have a lot of these, but when we do have these, they pose some unique circumstances. Unfortunately, the fatality fire we had in the north part of the district, okay? Fire crews attempted to go inside, make access. We had somebody we knew that was on the second floor of the house. They tried to pull those hose lines, get them up the stairwell to get in and start looking for this victim. Unfortunately, as they go to advance up the stairwell is compromised by the fire. They can't get up there. What do? Have to back out, reconfigure, throw a ladder to a window, and try to advance the hose line into the window, still fire beneath them to try to get to this location. In order to learn from that event, I have to replicate that event. This facility allows me to do that. We've talked about location. It is in the best location. It really is. My training facility, it already exists there. I have a training room, all the infrastructure that we need. And with all due respect to the visual issues, when I look at that open story at 20 by 20 feet, I think that the protection of life and safety, I think, trumps, if you will, that small incursion into that area.
Thank you, Councilmember Frazier. And excuse me for one moment. Can I ask staff to please close the back door? Thank you. Councilmember.
Thank you, Chief. A couple more comments. And we were talking about the nearby senior complex where altogether we have 300 residents, and I thank Ms. Murphy for being here this evening to represent them. We know a lot from that community. This is a little too late for them to come out at night. I live nearby there, and there's probably no one more grateful in that community for these gentlemen who are sitting here. There's sirens every day there coming to the aid of our seasoned community residents, and they're very concerned. They're a neighbor down the street from the firehouse, and thankfully they are that close because they're there almost every day in some different capacity, and they're very, very thankful that a tower would be there because they realize the importance of the training that these gentlemen have to go through. There's been talk about another location. You know, how many times do we hear that when anything's been brought up, you could move it to another place? I mean, love the coast side, but boy, aren't we NIMBYs? Not in my backyard or not near me, or, you know, whether it's a sporting field or something. Yeah, we like it, we support this, but, you know, it's got to be someplace else. We do that a lot. This is not on the east side. This is on the west side. And when we talk about it's on Main Street, that end of Main Street is the industrial area. You've got a firehouse on the corner there. You've got a building that's currently the Playhouse, but it used to be the old Pac Bell warehouse place. They put their trucks, they put their spools of line there. But across the street, you've got a major parking lot and service station. You have cars all over out there. being serviced. That is the industrial end of town. And people talked about, well, where else do people put towers? They put their towers right next to their firehouse. You look at Colma, I think Burlingame was already mentioned, San Mateo. And do we remember where the old fire station used to be? It was right in the middle of Main Street, across the street from Bank of America. That was the fire station, and they had a fire tower right behind it as well. We didn't have a Ritz-Carlton at the time, nor did we have these 2- and 3-story buildings that people are in. But the fire tower is always located next to the firehouse, and our gentlemen are on the move, active right now. There's so many important things to this, and as it's been said, this is a fire department, CAL FIRE, who services not just Half Moon Bay, the entire coast side, up to Skyline, up to La Honda. They need a place to train, and I'm thankful that they'd be able to train here in their own backyard, serving local people. They are local firefighters who are serving us locally on the coast. And that's very important to me, because it'll be located in the industrial part of that Main Street.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further comments?
Another question.
Another question, yes. Question 4. Chief Cole? Or just for
The attorney. It's an elaboration on the question about the defective noticing. And I think the city's kind of agreed that the noticing has been defective because it's a public facility and appealable to the commission. So what I'd like to know is, what is the impact of the defective noticing on this process?
I believe you may have misheard me earlier. I said it was not defective.
But if it's a major public facility, it makes it appealable to the commission, and yet the noticing said that it was not.
I may ask Carol, since she has some of the documentation.
So let me roll on that one. The system's not working well. Again, it's 18-20060A6. Basically has 2 parts. One for the notice, and this applies to all coastal development permits. It requires the notice, requires the description, requires all of those things. Part 2 says, if the project is located in the appeal zone of the California Coastal Commission, we will give notice of that and indicate that it is appealable. If you go further into our local coastal plan, clearly there are distinctions in that, even at that point, that says, here's the description of the appealable coastal zones, and there is also an appeal for major public works projects. So the major public works project is not in the appealable zone. It just happens to be a specific type of activity that is appealable. Therefore, it is not required for the notice.
So it is appealable to the Coastal Commission?
Yes. Your decision, whatever that may be, is appealable to the Coastal Commission because it constitutes a major public works project.
So it seems like there's a defect then in our code that doesn't allow for proper noticing of major public works projects.
I was just, one of the things I was doing was looking at the Coastal Act, and I was looking at the local coastal plan, and I was also looking at program and our own ordinance. I don't think that there is a defect per se. There's certainly some clarity that we could improve upon, and I think as we look at our LCP update and amendment, we should look at dealing with that issue and probably just make it clean and easy that says if it's a public works project or in the coastal zone, we should identify that it's appealable. But I don't think, I would agree that it's a defect. It's just a lack of clarity in that is not perfect, let's say.
And I'll echo John's statements that that's probably the best way to look at it. There is no technical defect. In fact, it is technically correct but there's some lack of clarity, but I think you find that all over Title 18, quite frankly. One of the sections cited by, I think, the appellant regarding what is a visual resource area. Well, when you read that sentence, it's a run-on sentence that has words that make no sense in it. It says, these areas include. I don't know how you read that as a coherent sentence. So there's lots of cleanups and lots of clarity issues, but we have a technically viable, a procedurally correct, and a proper notice, even though I think John has pointed out quite aptly that we could indicate that this is also appealable as a major public works project. The code doesn't require it, so there's no technical.
And I would just point out, for the record and for the council, we added the language about this being appealable because we felt it was, again, an appropriate thing to do. But we did that after consulting with Stephanie Rexing and Nancy Cave specifically about this issue and confirming that it would constitute a major public works project. So it did occur, and do I wish it was done with the Planning Commission? Certainly, for that clarity purposes, but was it required? No. But we did do that following concerns and issues raised, and also confirmation by the Coastal Commission that it would be appropriate to put that language in the notice.
Going forward, that would be something to look at, because I think the issue raised about appropriate signaling and disclosure to the public is really important. Why does my mic keep going off? Okay. All right.
We'll have to look at.
I'd like to, you're not going to hear what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you that I support wholeheartedly, a well-trained, well-equipped fire department and first responders. I wholeheartedly support that. What I don't believe is that it's an all or nothing thing. And I've looked at the same site that a lot of people have looked at online called firefacilities.com, and you basically can configure all kinds of fire training facilities to meet your needs. And there's various models you can choose from that are anywhere from 2.5 stories to 4 or 5 stories. They actually recommend that you choose something that represents an average of the buildings in your community, as opposed to, making it as tall as your tallest building. But in any case, somebody raised the issue of being able to tweak the height and tweak the architecture, and clearly it can be done, and it would bring the facility into compliance with the law. I totally agree that 18.037 of the zoning code is a violation having to do with the breaking up of the ridge line to the east. While I do not think it's an appropriate facility for that location, I understand where you're coming from on locating that facility, but I would suggest, and I could support, something that addresses the height and the design to make it more compatible with surroundings and brings it into conformance with our local coastal program. I do think some additional conditions would be wise to add, including no live burns on weekends or holidays. This is a tourist community. We're not Fremont, we're not Milpitas, we're not Los Gatos, we're Half Moon Bay, we're in the coastal zone, we're a tourist community that is based on our agriculture and our marine economy and our recreational economy. So no live burns, weekends or holidays. I also think we should condition that the building after live burns should be cleaned up so that you don't see an ugly, smudge-covered, building. In spite of what you say about there being some industrial uses at our gateways, I think we've just knocked ourselves out in this town to do what we can to destroy the beauty of our gateways. I can give you countless examples. I'm not going there, but we seem compelled over and over again to do that. And I think we want to stop doing that. So we can start now by having a facility that meets the LCP and better fits in with the surrounding structures. You can go online to this facility and see some really nice ones that look like barns, that look like salt box houses. They come in different colors that blend in. They don't have to look really industrial. So what I'm telling you is I support you, but I don't see this as an all or nothing thing. I know you want what you want. You're a specific purpose special district. You have one overarching goal, but my job as a city council member is to balance multiple interests. So that's where I'm coming from. I will talk about CEQA. My guess is that nothing can be done about that unless it goes back to square one, but I've heard over and over again tonight, and I've seen it in the staff report, that this facility was envisioned a long time ago. It was part of the plan for buying that parcel of land and building that fire station, which should have signaled to you that you needed to do an environmental impact report, because the California Environmental Quality Act prohibits segmentation of projects. You have to address all foreseeable future actions in one document. So if there's a significant impact and you can reasonably foresee that there are multiple projects on one piece of land, you have to look at it in one document, and that's called a master environmental impact report. So that would have allowed you to look at alternative locations or alternative configurations of the facility, but instead, the California Environmental Quality Act was skirted, just like several other special districts in this community have done. So I don't disagree with this assertion of yours that CEQA is not an issue. It clearly was an issue and not done well. So I support you. Some changes need to be made, some new conditions, and I think the public might be able to, the public that's opposed to this could support it under those conditions. So let's not take the all or nothing thing that's very divisive, but let's work together to come up with a solution that addresses multiple concerns. And yes, it requires more work and more time, but certainly that has not been an issue heretofore. So if we have to do a couple more months working on this, I don't see the problem.
So I have some comments, if everyone else is finished. So I am fully in support of a training facility at this location. I fully support that. I think, yes, would I prefer a different location? I would. Am I aware of a different location? I'm not. It makes complete sense to be for the training facility to be adjacent to the fire station. That makes great sense. I'm not going to get into the business of suggesting specifications for the training facility. That's not my role. I'm not on the fire board, nor am I the chief of the fire district. I have to assume that you spec the facility you need. I appreciate the comments about sizing it right for the community, and I think that has some merits. But I am fully in support of a training facility at this location. I think you spec'd a good one. However, I don't think you gave careful consideration to aesthetics. And the south end of Main Street is not industrial, in my opinion. There's a theater. It may have been something else, but it's a theater now. There's Half Moon Bay Park, which is a affordable housing community. There's an automotive retailer. None of that is industrial. I would not want to see a paint manufacturer on Main Street. But that being said, I'm aware that that consideration can be given. I like the comment about cleaning the building, or perhaps choosing an aesthetic that fits a downtown corridor. I would be totally comfortable with that. And all of these thoughts were, as I was reading my 300 pages of documentation, page 108 stood out to me when it discussed the original plan for the site for a training facility. The original plan included a single-story volunteer building or museum proposed to be located on Main Street, facing Main Street in front of the training facility. And I thought, well, why would they do that? Well, they were giving consideration to the aesthetic and to this is Main Street, Half Moon Bay. So I thought that made a lot of sense. So we know So I believe the fire district has deep pockets. I believe this is quickly solvable to address my concern. I will fully support a training facility at this location, meeting the appropriate requirements, but I would like you to give additional consideration to the aesthetic of the facility and of that location. I just want to assure it's compatible with the surroundings. The theater is in the midst of, I believe you talked with the folks from the theater. The theater is planning a renovation. I think it would be appropriate for this all to fit together as part of our downtown corridor. Just check my notes here. So I'm gonna, for those reasons and for those reasons alone, I'm going to uphold the appeal in my vote, and really in keeping with Municipal Code 18.01.010, 18.37.010, just want to mention these into the record, 14.37.030B, and 14.37.040A, all regarding the aesthetic, visual appeal, visual character of the downtown, our ability to offer more restrictive requirements in these situations, to require the project to not be unsightly, and to enhance the visual appeal of the area. I think that's the best thing for our community. I look forward to seeing the project come forward, should the appeal carry forward. I look forward to seeing the project come forward with some of those changes. And if there's no other discussions, I'll entertain a motion.
I will move that, okay.
Clarification, the action being requested is to deny the appeal and to approve the design review and CDP. That's what's on the table. So you would need to either defer action until they came back with the aesthetics for the design review, or
no, sir, I don't.
Or to define what it is that your expectations are for design review revisions.
So we can either uphold or decline or deny the appeal, and I've given my opinion on that, on where I stand.
But
right?
But you're suggesting that at some point this will come back.
It may.
For additional. It will not under this scenario. Okay.
I still will make a motion. I move that the City Council has reviewed and considered the final initiative study and mitigated negative declaration for the project adopted by the lead agency, the Coastside Fire Protection District, deny the appeal, affirm the Planning Commission's decision, and approve PDP-15-046, an application for coastal development permit and architectural review for construction of a prefabricated fire training tower of 50 feet in height and 4,497 square feet in floor area with an undisclosed platform of 550 square feet on the 86,463 square foot lot developed with the existing fire station and fire training yard in the P-6 Public Service Zoning District, based upon the findings and evidence contained in Exhibit A and B of the resolution and subject to the conditions of approval contained in Exhibit C. I so move.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Motion is second. I would like a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Penrose?
No.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Fraser?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reddick?
No.
Mayor Kowalczyk?
Respectfully, no. Is there an alternative motion, alternative discussion? Yeah, so we need to, so to give direction to staff, we have additional discussion. Is that appropriate?
I don't think so.
You can continue to discuss the item. I think that John's inquiry was of the nature of, if there's what appears to be two council members indicating they desire to see some changes before they would support the project. And I remember Chief Cole asked at the beginning, well, how tall is too tall? in terms of giving guidance to the fire district to be able to come back with something that might get support, this would probably be an appropriate time to.
So I think what we need to do is perhaps redo the story polls to the point that the building does not appear to break the ridge line from any point driving along Highway 1. I don't know how tall that is. I heard that 35 feet for the fire station. There's a small place where that breaks the ridge line. So I'm not going to give direction on height, but it needs to conform to 18.37.
Well, I feel that this is not the place to redesign this fire tower. We've gone through many, many hours and scenarios of this fire tower, and I'm not going to sit up here and redesign it just off the cuff because I don't like the looks of it. I don't think that's our role. I'm not sure, legal counsel, am I right at that, or can we kind of redesign it here on the fly?
There's no legal reason. There's no legal reason why council can't give comments at this point, share direction. As the motion didn't carry, the item hasn't been adjourned, if you will, so there's additional conversation that can go forward. So it certainly isn't something that can be dictated. The fire district can take the considerations of the city council into mind and present anything, but there's no reason to not give it. There's no prohibition on it at this point.
I don't think, so John, with all due respect, I don't think we're redesigning anything. I envision some revisions happening. It may never come to us again, but I want to be heard of what would make, I would love to see a training facility at this location, and I wanted to express my interest in what I'd like to see there and upholding my responsibility to the city for the aesthetics of our downtown corridor and of our main street. So I'll share my opinion because I want them to understand that should they go forward and develop a project for this site. And I would like to see a project on this site. I think it'd be good they understand that.
Yeah, but it would be my understanding that they'd have to go back through the whole process again. Is that correct?
There are, as staff would see it, two options. You could continue this item, stating for the record your intention to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission and deny the appeal, subject to coming back with conditions and revisions to the tower that are to your liking as a majority of the council would see. Or you could go forward and uphold the appeal and deny this action and ask them without prejudice that they may proceed to refile the project as a new application and proceed in that regard, which would again take it through the Planning Commission review process and then potentially appealable to both you and the Coastal Commission under that scenario. So those are the two most logical scenarios in this that play out.
So if I understand correctly, you're saying, so if we end the meeting now, it's basically back to the drawing board, or we can have a motion to continue the item with some, ask them to refile, or give me the wording on that, to refile with subject to some refinements.
And why I think Reed was suggesting that it's perfectly appropriate to identify what your issues and concerns and desires are is under the scenario that you would continue this item, provide the applicant the direction. The direction can be either accepted and received and modified by the applicant and come back, or they could choose to forego their project and decline that option and proceed out that way. So that's, yes, so those are your two options.
It's the pleasure of the council.
Well, I personally would like to see them modify the project, bring it into conformance, and bring it back.
I would too. I'd rather do that. Well, I think that's a better option than going back to square one.
Yeah.
Well,
So it sounds like
we've
denied it, so you're making your recommendation of what you'd like to see, but we have just denied as a body.
City manager, please clarify.
procedurally, I don't think that you have denied, you just have not, there's lots of negatives, so you've not, the motion failed. So no action was taken, the motion failed. So you can now take a motion that says you'd like to continue it, or you could do another motion that says you'd like to, again, the negatives.
There was a motion to deny the appeal, which was unsuccessful. Council can now either vote to continue the item or vote to uphold the appeal, which would effectively reject the project. So no decision's been made. Only one decision is that there's no affirmative, this project's not going forward. There hasn't been a vote on that, that's for sure.
Got it. So I am not going to vote to uphold the appeal. Let's see what the sense of the council is. I don't want to block it, right? But if we can continue and move forward, I would support that. Then it keeps the project moving and it gets us one step closer to a training facility at this location. So I'm not sensing we have cognition here. I don't want to make a mayor's motion. I'm not prepared.
The appropriate motion, based on what you're telling me, would be a motion to continue the item and to a date to be established at a future time, to allow the applicant to come back with a project that's been modified, and that modification possibly would be what your direction would be today, 35 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. When we say to be in conformance with the law, which particular section of 18.37, because a broad sweeping be in conformance with the law doesn't give our project applicant an idea of what to correct.
Right.
So I think it needs to be brought into conformance with 18.37035. In other words, it needs to be at a height that doesn't penetrate the ridgeline and the hills to the east. And then the mayor brought up the issue of aesthetic compatibility with Main Street and downtown, and making it better fit in. Is that right?
Correct. So some efforts made, and I'll leave it very broadly, some efforts made for the prefab industrial looking building to fit in, but I don't know if it's put shutters on it, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that they've built these in other locations. I've seen other examples of them that are less industrial looking. And with that, I would move to continue this item to the first meeting in April, should that be sufficient time or not. Do we not? I'm getting scary looks.
Why don't we just bring it as soon as possible?
Excuse me?
Maybe we can just say as soon as possible, because we want to give the applicant enough time to.
That is fair. I'd like to give the applicant sufficient time. So I move to continue this item to a future meeting at a time to be determined to readdress this.
And I have a question. That means it has to go back to the Planning Commission to approve it, and then to us? It'll come straight to us. So are we dictating to the fire science professionals on how tall this should be? Are we just saying we want it to look pretty? Because I will go
Don't belittle me. I'm not saying look pretty.
No, let me finish.
But don't belittle me. I'm not saying make it look pretty.
I'm not talking about belittling you. I am making a statement on how I feel. Now, if you're just saying that you want to make it pretty, I'm okay with that. But I am not comfortable in dictating to fire science professionals on how tall this should be for our community, because they've made a determination based on what we have existing. That is what I'm saying.
I'm saying the current structure is in violation of the zoning code, and it needs to be brought into conformance with the zoning code, 18.37.035. So not just more aesthetic and fit in better, be in conformance with the zoning code.
So there then is the opportunity for the fire district to come back and say, we can't do it with that. And then we'd have to reevaluate this. If they said it can't be done, then we have to evaluate our position on that. But maybe they could say, we can have a great facility. I don't know. Let's give them that opportunity. But there are two conditions put forward with the continuance.
I need to really clarify, is it in violation as it was just stated by the vice mayor? If it's in violation, then we've got some big problems. But if it, I have been under the impression that it was not in violation.
I will allow the Community Development Director, John Dowdy, to answer that. He's got it brought up for.
So this section in front of you is 1837, which has been referenced extensively. Item C is what's been referenced in the appellant's presentation. If you look at the construction of 1837.035, it specifically is talking about building in the hillsides. You can look at it. If you look at section A, grading or creation of a building site which results in significant alteration of the natural terrain shall not be allowed. Again, this is under the premise and the definition of being at the 160-foot level in the hillside. Structures and roads shall be designed to fit the topography of the site with minimal cutting, grading, or filling. Structures shall be sited so as not to intrude or project above the ridge line, skyline, and be from Highway 1 and 92. Tree stands. This is all about construction within the hillside area, and ostensibly, if you look at the construction again of the whole section, on upland slopes area at the 160-foot and above level. From that perspective, staff has made it abundantly clear throughout this process that we do not believe this project is in conflict or in contradiction or violates the municipal code in this regard. What we have said to the Planning Commission, what legal staff has said to the Planning Commission, is that your own design review standards provide you ample opportunity to evaluate, assess, and determine the appropriateness and the compatibility of this project as well as any other project, both in the affirmative or in the toward denial. And those are where we recommended and where legal staff recommended the Planning Commission focus its attention, not on this specific section of 1837.035C, which from our perspective is solely related to building in the slope area, upland slope area. So from that perspective, our recommendation, I believe that Reed's will be the same, is to emphasize and focus on the design review findings, which are well available to you to address the issues of compatibility and reduce height if that's a choice, to improve aesthetics, whatever it may be. You have a wide discretion and authority under those provisions, and that's where we again recommend you focus on, because this we believe this is not the place to go.
And just to give a little bit of illumination to that, the reason we don't feel that it's the appropriate standard, it's not that this structure violates the standard or doesn't violate the standard, it's our opinion that the standard doesn't apply. And that's based on 1837.015, which defines the applicability, and 1837.020, which defines visual resource areas. Visual resource areas include scenic corridors, upland slopes, and planned development areas, and the old downtown. And what it says is that the Community Development Director shall prepare and maintain maps of all designated visual resource areas. Visual resource areas within the city are defined as follows, and that defines upland slopes. Based on the applicability section, which would mean when do you apply the upland slope standard, you would look at the applicability, which says, in addition, all new development projects within or adjacent to visual resource areas shall meet the visual resource standards established within this chapter. City staff's interpretation of that's pretty clear. If you're building within a PUD under 1837, you look at the PUD visual standards and you apply them. In this case, we're building next to a PUD, so that's adjacent to, so you might trigger the PUD requirements, but there are no PUD visual requirements for the parcels that are adjacent to where this public service parcel is located. So to John's point, the place to hang a hat to refuse this project is not on a perceived violation of 18.37. 18.37, as it regards upland slopes, doesn't apply. The Highway 1 corridor, it doesn't apply. Those standards simply don't apply. That's the distinction we're trying to make. So if you want to say it doesn't comply with the general policies for compatibility and obnoxious or unsightly appearance, there's ample opportunity to rely on those and just say, ultimately it's just too unsightly, it's just too obnoxious, I want something better for our community. But saying that it violates 1837 upland slope standards, that's not a correct legal analysis, at least from our perspective.
So I'm going to amend my motion. I made a motion to continue at a time to be determined, to continue this item and allow the fire district to bring it back with refinements based on aesthetic and, what's the right word? Visual compatibility to the community. That's my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I would like a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Penrose?
Yes.
Councilmember Mueller?
Yes, I want to see this thing built.
Councilmember Fraser?
I'll say yes if that's the only way that they keep this going.
Vice Mayor Reddick?
Yes.
Mayor Kowalczyk?
Yes. Motion carries 5-0. With that, thank you everybody for your patience this evening and your consideration and your comments. I conclude this meeting.
What about the continued?
I reopen the meeting. I've got 2 items from the consent agenda that should go quickly.
And I'm going to leave on the final one, so I have to recuse myself.
Okay. Let me find my consent agenda. So I pulled consent agenda item 1C. Let me pull it up in my report here.
Would you like a brief report, Mr. Mayor?
Just briefly, but in 1 second. It'll take me a minute to find it in my packet here. If you could just give me a 30-second flyover of this item, please.
Good evening. This item is to approve a contract to start work on a citywide comprehensive records management program. Diane Gladwell has worked with over 150 cities in the state and is highly regarded as one of the best. So I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. My question is, there is a scope of work attached, and some of the items in that scope of work were not referenced in the staff report. And so my question is, are all of the elements of the scope included in the project?
Yes, that scope of work that's attached is the comprehensive project.
Excuse me, can I ask you guys to take your conversations outside? Thanks. Thank you. So that was my question, because the most important thing to me was making sure it wasn't just consulting, but we're actually doing the work, which was mentioned in the document. So with that, I move to approve consent calendar item 1C.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving to item 1H, Vice Mayor Ruddick recuses herself from this item. I think we need to, what's the rule? We wait for her to leave the room, so we'll do that.
Deborah, just a friendly reminder to state on the record the reason for the recusal. If you could state on the record the reason for the recusal. Sorry.
I am recusing myself from this item because my property will be affected by the pipeline project.
Thank you. All right. And with that, as she's nearly exited the room, we have a 30-second flyover of this, please. Excuse me? Yes. 1H.
Sorry. I'm fighting the bug, so I'm losing it. As you're aware, the PG&E is continuing to proceed toward requesting approvals from the city to replace approximately 5 miles of main line, as well as to replace up to and including 500 services. As part of that, the city believes it's prudent to have oversight and to ensure that our streets are repaired and returned to their at least pre-construction levels, that the residents are being treated fairly, and that overall the work is being done and traffic safety is being addressed. As such, we ask for a quote from Valley Cooper, who is our current consultant assisting us through engineering, and this represents their proposal. The price is set because this is a public works project subject to prevailing wages, and so that's why the cost is such. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, is there a motion to approve item 1H?
Move to approve and to award contract for construction management and inspection services for PG&E gas distribution pipeline replacement project.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Marina?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. This concludes tonight's meeting.